right, good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, the evening of August the 17th, 2015. It's time to call this San Felipe del Rio Consolidated Independent School District Board of Trustees regular meeting to order. Ms. Haynes?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Chavita?
Here.
Mr. Garabedian?
Here.
Here. Ms. Martinez-Lozano?
Here.
Mr. Mesa?
Here.
Mr. Oberfeld?
Here.
And Dr. Keys.
Ms. Haynes, we do have a quorum.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let the record show that a quorum of the board members are present, that this meeting has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, we welcome Dr. Keys. And then let's please stand for opening ceremonies, beginning with a moment of silence.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, as we open the meeting today, we give a special thanks to our guests in the audience, of course, our staff and administrators, and we'll begin with recognitions, the recognition of varsity cheerleaders. Ms. De Leon. Shall we come back to that item?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. We can recognize them after a bit. Going to number 5 and number 6 on our agenda, public hearings and board members report. We have no items. Let's proceed to number 7, reports. We begin with A, the status update, elementary K-5 bilingual newcomer academies. Mrs. Ivega.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Rios, members of the board.
Thank you.
We're here today to give an update of the bilingual newcomer center. Some of the things that have been accomplished and implemented is, first of all, we identified how many students are at each center. You can see that we have Garfield, 150, Buena Vista, 97, Ruben Chavita, 151, Lonnie Green, 134, for a total of 534 students that have a proficiency level of beginner or intermediate. We've also identified the number of teachers at each of the centers servicing our beginner and intermediate students. These teachers are certified with their bilingual endorsement. We have at Garfield 12 teachers, Buena Vista 10 teachers, Ruben Chavita 13, Dr. Lonnie Green 11, for a total of 46 teachers. During the recommendation of the think tank, they recommended that the instructional aides, we should have an instructional aide for each of the teachers servicing bilingual and intermediate students. So what we did is we formed a planning committee. A planning committee for instructional aides met and agreed that while the use of kinder aides is not a common practice in school districts across Texas, the practice of having kinder aides would not be entirely eliminated at San Felipe del Rio CISD. The committee agreed that one dedicated instructional aide would be assigned to regular kindergarten classrooms to support teachers during the guided instruction block. A schedule will be provided by the principal, and we would use rubric-based assessments, which would be provided to alleviate time allotted for testing, except of course when we administer the reading diagnostic assessment, which this year we're going to be using the TPRI. The planning committee also agreed that priority of instructional aid assignments is to be filled for elementary bilingual classrooms in every grade level at the bilingual newcomer centers. Instructional aides would be assigned to kindergarten, other grades for a dedicated time to support guided instruction in the regular classroom at the bilingual centers. This would be when the teacher is planning during planning protocol, or they have a conference time, then the kindergarten, the aide for the bilingual center at that time can go and assist other teachers there at the campus as well to work with students. Instructional aides who were not currently at the bilingual newcomer center had an option to choose their top 3 choices for transfer. So at, the teachers that were already at Garfield the aides, they were already at Garfield, got to stay at Garfield. At Dr. Lonnie Green, they stayed at Lonnie Green, but for example, at North Heights and Lonnie and Calderon, and my other one, Lamar, sorry, Lamar. I know, yes, Lamar, I'm like, who are the 3? They went ahead and applied and selected their top 3 choices for what campus they wanted to transfer to. So the aides were notified of their assignments on June the 8th, right when school let out. It was a work day. At this time also, we finalized the transportation schedules for the newcomer centers. The principal, CIO, and transportation director met on August 14th to review the routes. Students will be picked up and transported directly to the newcomer centers. And then during orientation, principals will ask parents to fill out a transportation required form just so that we can adjust the pickup times, because right now they are starting a little bit early, but because they're stopping in all the different bus routes so that they can pick up the students. Once we know exactly how many students will need bus transportation, then those times will be adjusted. Tonight we have an all call through Skylar to invite parents to orientation so that they can sign up for transportation. The enrolling process has also changed. Before, when a student would register at the district, they would go to Student Support Services. They would be automatically enrolled to their zone campus. So now, because we have the newcomer academies, we need to determine the student's proficiency level so that we can either assign him to the zone campus or to the bilingual center. So if we have trained the interventionist and ESL strategist to administer the oral proficiency test to identify the proficiency level and determine the campus the students will be enrolled. And currently, we only have 1 student that has denied the program.
Sorry,
Yes.
clarify, because the handout that you provided the board says 3 students.
Oh, I'm sorry. Originally, I thought it was 3 students, but today I double-checked with Mrs. Gomez, and it's only 1 student. And I say Mrs. Gomez because we also changed the process since before we had a bilingual director and they were staff. So what we did now is Mrs. Gomez is taking care of the compliance part. So she has 2 secretaries that were at the bilingual office, and now they're working with her. So she takes care of the denials, and then one of the secretaries is assigned to CNI as well as the bilingual coordinator. So I'm sorry about that. And then, of course, at the centers, we will also have an ESL strategist who will help facilitate and collaborate the planning protocol. They will gather resources for teachers. They will assist and support with curriculum development. They would help disaggregate data, model, mentor, co-teach, provide professional development, assist with guided instruction as modeling for the teacher, and then monitor student progress on the language proficiency and academic progress. As far as curriculum, a group of teachers have met with our bilingual coordinator and elementary coordinator to develop the bilingual curriculum. And in a presentation later today, we can show you what that document looks like. and those documents are ready for the first 6 weeks. Teachers and administrators will receive training on QTEL, and we will continue working on developing the bilingual curriculum for the year. Is there any questions at this time?
Mr. Mesa?
I do have a question. And that's on the monitoring process, because, it's been everywhere that they need to be monitored. Whether it's a student that is in the bilingual program or a student that qualifies but denied, they still have to be monitored. And so what is going to indicate that it was being done?
The monitoring piece?
Yes.
What we also have is Mrs. Leyva, who was working under Mrs. Gomez, is going to also be assisting the CNI so that she can look at the LPEC process and then set up a process to monitor the students to make sure that they're being successful. And also with the ESL strategist, if you saw on there, one of the components is to monitor the proficiency level, because a lot of times a student is beginner, intermediate at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, they still have not changed the proficiency level. So what we're gonna do now is every 6 weeks, we're going to be monitoring to make sure that they're increasing the proficiency level.
But how is it going to be documented to know that it was done?
We're gonna have a process, and that's part of, I think today we're going to present the job description for Mrs. Leyva, and on there it says that she'll be responsible for establishing a process to monitor the students. So a process will be, it's gonna be in writing.
It will be documented, like dates when it was,
Right.
the grades were looked at or something, because again, that's part of the audit process that says monitoring wasn't going on.
Right, and we wanna make sure that we do that this year.
So if we were to ask, like, could you show me something, you would
Oh, yes,
be able to provide it?
definitely. Just like we're giving you an update today on this information, later on you can ask an update, and we'll be glad to provide that information for you.
Thank you.
Dr. Keys?
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. How long is the newcomer academy for? Is it my understanding correctly here? They're new to the country, for example, and they qualify for the program. We put them in the newcomer academy with the whole intention, I guess, to put them back into the home school?
Right.
Okay, how long is that process, the timeline typically?
It's really going to be based on the students, because what we want to do is make sure that they acquire the advanced high proficiency level. So once they're at
Don't say
that,
that,
I'm sorry,
don't say that.
don't say that. So,
Talk academics.
okay.
Okay, but how long do you think the process is from when they first start the academy till they go to the home classroom?
And something that we had this year, and we're hoping that we continue, is that when we first started working on the Newcomers Academy, we identified that we were gonna have a certain number of students. Then when we had the TELPAS results come in this year, it was like 30% less students that we anticipated, because we feel through the practices that we have this year, the students are reaching that level at a quicker rate.
Dr. Keys, if I might add, while the goal isn't to exit the students from bilingual status, the goal is to provide advancement for them. And we have anticipated that we could take a student that is at the beginner level and accelerate their progress, their academic progress, within 2 years max. If they come to us with a little bit more beyond the beginner level, then it may be less. But as soon as they've reached that potential, then we would transition them back to their home campus.
Because we want to avoid the situations we see that many schools go visit, and you feel so bad for the kids, the newcomers especially. The kids in the back of the row, they don't know what the heck their teacher's saying. And everyone's answering, the kids are smiling there, but lost. So I just hope we turn that around. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. Ms. Garcia, looking at the student-to-teacher ratios, you can see that there are several grades that have few students, and looks like the student-teacher ratios are going to be fairly low. Will these classrooms still have the aides?
So
No, and I'm, okay.
what we have to do is first wait for the students to show up.
Right.
And once we have a good understanding of the students that show up, then we will make some adjustment. For example, one thing that we considered, however, we have to wait till the actual students show up, we considered consolidating perhaps the newcomers for a particular grade level between Buena Vista and Lonnie Green, because you can see that there is one grade level where there are 6 students at Lonnie Green in 5th grade. It would be acceptable, even though our goal is to have 15 to 1, to consolidate the Buena Vista and Lonnie Green students, but we'll wait till they show up and we'll have those discussions. Also, have the discussions how to make better use of the aides at that point. I think that the plan is a solid plan, but we have to be willing and able to adjust it once the students show up. And we'll definitely look at it and be as efficient as we can without taking away from the program that was developed for the students.
So there's still a possibility that once you identify how many students are actually going to be in a certain class, that some of these kindergarten aides actually go back to the regular kindergarten classrooms, perhaps?
Not on a full-time basis, but certainly increase the amount of time that we will already allot for kindergarten aides.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So in essence, like a school within a school, right? You have 2 things going on at once.
Madam President,
Absolutely.
can we go back to the curriculum slide?
Sure.
The last bullet, can you tell me what exactly does that mean? I mean, we're at a week before the start of the school year, and there's a bullet on your slide that says we'll continue working on developing the bilingual curriculum for the year. I mean, so curriculum stated generally is what is taught. So a little clarity on that would be nice. We don't have an established bilingual curriculum
We
at
have
this
it for
time?
the first 6 weeks, and we're gonna meet before for, yes.
We have an established curriculum, and our bilingual students, like any students, should receive that curriculum. However, as we take newcomers, particularly the students at the beginning and intermediate level, there is some adjusting to the curriculum, there is some supportive resources. And no, the answer is clear. We have not had a well-defined bilingual curriculum to support our beginner and intermediate students, and that isn't something that's something that has existed for a long time. If everyone may recall, one of the things that we were cited for was for the district's inability to teach in the language that the students dominate. That's one of the things we were cited for in the report. With the transferring of the bilingual department entirely under the current CNI structure that we have, we are beginning to develop a curriculum that is in line with the curriculum documents that we've had. But by the same token, 2 years ago, we also did not have well-defined curriculum documents. The district had defaulted to using C-Scope. When C-Scope was taken away, or at least the structure of it, we began to aggressively develop it through the CNI department. Today, in the next presentation, you'll see some really wonderful things. Now we need to do the same thing for the bilingual department. We are going to build it throughout the year and continue to refine it. But no, we have not had a well-defined bilingual curriculum to support the teaching of students in their dominant language.
Who's we on that bullet?
That's the teachers and the bilingual coordinator and elementary coordinator, along with our early literacy coordinator.
Okay, so when you say the bilingual teachers, right, those who are now, in many cases, at different schools under kind of different oversight or different procedures, is there, I mean, are they going to develop curriculum as part of their regular schedule, their structure, or is this in addition to what they're already doing?
We will continue the model that we had from last year, which is once a 6 weeks, we bring them together so that together with the instructional coaches, bilingual, in this case, it would be the ESL strategists, the teachers, the bilingual coordinators work together to complete the curriculum.
So no additional time or planning on their part?
No, just during the day.
If I could add, over the course of the last 2 years, a lot of the curriculum documents have been developed in conjunction with teachers. However, without disregarding the terrific work that a lot of our teachers have done, it's been the curriculum coordinators that get the input from the teachers and then go and refine the documents. So we will count on the teachers to continue to provide the input, but they really aren't pulled out of the classroom except maybe once a 6 weeks. And if we were to bring them in on Saturdays, then we would provide additional pay.
Dr. Rios, just to clarify, this is not anything different than what you actually did in developing our current curriculum for the English side, correct?
Exactly.
It's kind of happening as we went along for that first year, anyway, I recall,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
And in the last presentation, we'll show you all, I guess what we could determine as the end product, something that we're very proud of. And we hope to be very proud of this bilingual curriculum here within the year.
I still have questions, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Garabedian.
What's the student-to-teacher ratio for your non-bilingual elementary classroom?
We want to keep it at 22, as the state suggests, from K through 4th grade, and then between 25 to 27 for 5th grade.
And so what is the average student-to-teacher ratio for the bilingual academies and those classes in the bilingual academies?
About 13.
13, so about half? Is that sustainable, long-term?
We're hoping.
You're hoping?
What we were doing before was not working, so this is a new model, and we really think that it's well planned out and that the students will be successful.
Mr. Garabedian, financially, it is sustainable because it's within our budget. Now, looking to the future, what we expect is that students will very quickly transition out of the newcomer academies into regular classrooms and then thus make it more affordable. But financially, obviously, we're not anticipating a dramatic growth in bilingual students, but if our bilingual students remain at 22 to 24% of the student population, then financially we could sustain it because, as you will see on Thursday, our budget is well within limits. Now, we hope that as we make progress, the progress will be more timely, thus resulting in more efficient use of our funds. But we believe that at 15 to 1, and again, we'll make adjustments as the year starts, we believe that we will have our students make the progress that we need, and that we won't always have to have as many bilingual classrooms and be able to move forward.
Any other questions?
This concentration of resources, can you show me in the TEA on-site report where they strongly recommended that?
Okay, when they first showed us the presentation here in the boardroom, they recommended that. They gave us a PowerPoint, and it was there where we should consolidate our resources. Then when they send the final report, I did not see that there.
The report's official, correct?
Right.
So it's not in this report. No other questions?
Thank you. Mr. Mesa had a follow-up question.
I had requested that I would receive the number of days that teachers have been pulled out this year. I have not received that. And so my concern is going to be, again, these teachers are being pulled out for curriculum writing, whether it's one day a month or one day every 2 months. I have not received that report that I've requested this current year.
That was
So-
done through the board communique?
I'm sorry, no.
The report.
Mr. Mesa, I apologize. I'll go back and look at my records, and we will commit to providing to you with this Friday's update. Dr. McNamara will work with me on that tomorrow.
Because my point is, again, during the time that I worked, I had my teachers pulled out 45 days during the year. And there's no way that they can improve their instructional scores if they're pulled out so many days out of the school year. I mean, that was excessive, and yet I was expected to bring up the scores. And so here's administration proposing one thing, school administration trying to get their scores up, and I mean, it's really, it's hitting yourself in the foot with a hammer and saying, how can I get this done? You know, if my teacher's being pulled out, you can't do it with substitutes.
We agree with you, Mr. Mesa, wholeheartedly. And I guarantee that we didn't pull the teachers out anywhere near 45 days this year. The good news about it, the good news is that we're done pulling teachers for the regular curriculum. We have it done. More good news is that we certainly didn't pull them out anywhere near that many days. And I think we're on the right track, and again, I believe the biggest load has been taken care of. Now we're moving on to bilingual, which is a smaller group of teachers, and less days, but certainly nowhere near that amount. We have been very cautious in the number of days that we pull teachers out, and I hope that we'll be able to demonstrate that with the data that we share with you this Friday, sir.
And I'm talking about any time that there's training that requires the teacher to be out during instructional day.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Next on the agenda is the status update of the rezoning of elementary attendance zones by Ms. Yanakani Valdez.
Good evening, Ms. Lozano, Dr. Rios, board members. The implementation of the rezoning process began where the community meetings were being held to discuss the reestablishing of the attendance zones, with our goals focusing on eliminating overcrowdedness and to allow for future growth. Parents received their 2015-2016 campus assignments at that time when those meetings were held. And we also updated FDB regulation so that we can use that as our guidance for the transfer request process. And during that same time frame, the Student Services Department began to receive transfer requests. Throughout, from May through up to last week, we received 643 student transfer requests. And the communications were as followed. On July 15th, our first letters of approval were mailed out to 332 students, which is approximately 52%. At July 15th, we weren't at 643 students. We were probably around between 550 and 575, so back then the percentage was higher. But the 52% is based on the number as of last week, so 643. Of course, throughout the summer, we continued to receive transfer requests. On July 21st, another process that was established was letters for affidavit verifications were mailed out. So if there were students who submitted affidavits of being at a certain address and of course that homeowner signed off, letters of affidavit verification were mailed out. On August 4th, we did a second round or second set of letters that were mailed out to 25 students, which brought us to a 56% cumulative on our transfer request approvals. At that time, on August 11th, we mailed out the letters of non-approvals. Again, every day we continue to receive transfer requests, so we're continuing to monitor that. And as those transfer requests come in, or as students withdraw, or as students register at a campus, we reevaluate our capacity at the campus. And on August 14th, we identified another 27 students, which I believe were being called today. The parents were being called today if they were still interested in the transfer. Throughout the summer as well, when we mailed out the first set of letters, there were a handful of parents that came in to withdraw their transfer request. So we had that activity happen throughout the summer. What our current enrollment and current is as of Thursday of last week, and of course the registration process is still open. But as of Thursday of last week, these are the enrollments for the elementary campuses by grade level. And this is a comparison to where we were when we began the communications of rezoning. So the two campuses that were identified as overcrowded and we established some of our rezoning plans around were Garfield and Buena Vista. And again, as of last week, that's the number we were at. And as I mentioned, registration is still ongoing. For kinder, we project that there would still be another 100 students that registered. In the first 2 weeks of August, I believe we had over 100 students register, and it was at all grade levels. It was between kinder up through 5th grade. So if we were to compare our April kinder students through 4th grade that now moved up into 1st grade through 5th grade, we do have a growth of about 20 students. So we do have 20 more students. If we take that total number of kinder through 4th that are now in 1st through 5th, those grade levels do have about 20 more students. So we did have growth in those grade levels. Now we're just waiting for kinder to look at the total growth for elementary. Are there any questions?
Why the growth mainly from Garfield, do you think?
I'm so sorry, sir?
From the 15th of August to the April snapshot? I mean, why the because they're still registering.
The rezoning, we rezoned in order to target the capacities. We rezoned to target our enrollment numbers. And Garfield, the number that we projected was, I believe, at either 700 or 750 as being the max of enrollment. Well,
Capacity earlier?
And Garfield, the capacity definitions are redefined because of the new ratios for our bilingual academies being 15-1. We now look at it as number of classrooms, and yes, we're close to the same number of classrooms as we were before.
Thank you.
Mr. Mesa?
I have a question, Yanagani,
Yes, sir.
and it has to do with students that are being transferred out of the district, whether they go on to private schools or whether they go on to Comstock. Have those requests for student folders been analyzed?
I would have to turn that over to probably Student Services for that answer, so because I'm not sure of that process.
Could we receive an update on that?
Okay.
Probably the best picture would be when school starts.
Okay.
But I'd like to know how many students we're actually losing on account of this rezoning.
Okay, and as I mentioned, I did monitor the change, and so far we have grown by 20 students. And this is just in total, kinder through fourth, that are now first through fifth, we have grown by about 20 students.
Right, but they still, we wait until they show up to school, because a lot of
Sir,
times
yes,
it's
sir.
on paper, but
Yes, sir. Okay, then yes, I understand now your request. Thank you.
Mr. Mesa, unfortunately, I think that even though the numbers will show an increase in enrollment, because we, obviously, our demographer told us we were gonna grow, I think the reality is that, we will also have some students that, because of the rezoning, will have opted to leave the district. So I think it'll be beneficial for all of us to look at it, and I think that it'll also be beneficial to look at after Christmas to see how many kids return to the district. I think you're gonna find that some students, particularly in grades K through fourth, I think we'll find a handful, not too many, but we will find a handful. But again, I'd be interested to see it also in January, to see how many return. We'll provide that.
Mr. Chavita?
Doc, on transportation, how many kids do we pick up at 6 o'clock in the morning? More or less?
I'd have to ask Mr. Salinas to provide that number. I know that as we met last Friday, I say we, I was only part of the meeting a little bit, but when they met with the Director of Transportation, we really tried as much as possible to curb that because of the numbers. I know they shared with me a couple of routes where it was gonna be 6 in the morning, and we tried a lot for a second bus driver to prevent that. But we'll probably have to get those numbers and share them with you, sir. But it is a considerable amount of time. For example, I know that they had reported a bus going into Laughlin at 6 in the morning because Laughlin doesn't allow us to take other students in. Neighborhood kids as we're picking up the Laughlin students. So we opted to do a second route in there because the elementary students that start school at 8 in the morning really shouldn't be picked up at 6. I also know that as we go into the Cienegas neighborhood, there we load all grade levels on the different buses. And that's also problematic because we also have to start very early there to pick up as many students. But Mr. Smith, can we commit to providing that number by this Friday in the board update as well?
Yes, sir, and as of the end of the day today, we spoke to Laughlin, and they are gonna allow other students to come on base.
Good.
To remedy that situation.
Thank you, Laughlin.
And the reason I'm asking is because actually, for us to eliminate the problem completely, we're just gonna have to make some changes on scheduling our kids coming into school. Because it's a shame that only a few people calling in, and we were on the verge of making some changes to eliminate all these people being picked up early in the morning, because it's hard on the kids. You don't have to get up real early and they'll be picked up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Those people that are complaining ought to stop up here and wait for the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning, especially during the winter time. I think we need to really work something out for next year. Again, it's a shame that they were picked up that early in the morning. I don't think very many of us get up at 6 o'clock just to get ready to go to work. And these kids need to get up by 5:30 to be able to be at the bus station. It's not right.
I've asked our staff, Mr. Chavita, to make a presentation for the month of the September board meeting. And there's a couple of issues that we'll discuss at the same time. One of them is the start time, and we'll be looking at for the following year, so we can start the discussion and be more inclusive of everyone who participates in the discussion, as well as look at block scheduling for the high school. We've had a number of parents that have requested us to look into that. Not saying that we're gonna go to block scheduling, I wanna make that clear, but I clearly wanna say that we will have the discussion at the same time, because they go hand in hand.
Well, let's do something about it, because, like I said, or buy some more buses. I mean, let's do something, because it's a shame.
Any other questions?
Mr.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I see on your, and if you can keep it on that slide,
Yes, sir.
that'd be great. I see on your slide a fairly significant decrease, or I guess leveling for Garfield and Buena Vista, which were the two biggest problem schools, right, as far as overcapacity.
As far as the number of sites
Right.
and future projections,
Yeah,
yes, sir.
well, August 15th compared to the April
Yes.
snapshot.
Mhm.
On the other schools, like North Heights, Lamar, are those numbers, are they within range of what the objective was? In other words, to go from 693 roughly at North Heights to 752, is that what the objective was?
The objective was, yes, we'd had to reevaluate our numbers in order to use the same campuses to rezone our students. So yes, some of the campuses were at 750, or projected was 750.
Okay.
And we were comparing to number of classrooms as well, because of the change in the student-to-teacher ratios for some of the campuses, so we made sure we monitored that as well.
I don't think we have any more questions. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Just in closing, over the last couple of weeks, we've met with a lot of parents who had not been able to get their transfer requests approved. We asked them to be patient, that we would reevaluate as soon as school opened, 2 weeks into it, to see how many students showed up. I know I met with a handful of parents last week. I think Betty has scheduled another handful of appointments for tomorrow. And again, we know it's a difficult time. We certainly do not want to cause any more anxiety, but at this point, if you were approved for a transfer, then you start. Otherwise, we will reevaluate at the second 6 weeks. What I've been able to tell parents as they come in is tell them specifically where they are on the waiting list, if they're next in line or if they're 7th or 10th. And that at least provides some clarity for them. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, Ms. Gomez. Ms. Gomez will be presenting on the TEA preliminary on-site report of findings instead of Dr. Garza.
Good evening, Mrs. Martinez-Lozano, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. We would like to update you on the targeted improvement plan. We have been discussing this since the preliminary report came out. So I do just have some key points to share with you at this time. The final TEA findings report was received on July the 10th. We had received one on June 24th. We had 10 days to review it. We did submit a couple of questions on it that were sent back for clarification, so the final one was received on July 10th. On that report, there are 33 action required indicators that were disseminated to responsible parties. And what I mean by that is we took every required action in that very long report, and we actually said, does this belong to human resources? Does it belong to curriculum and instruction? Does it belong to a special ed director? And we disseminated those actions to kind of get an idea of if it was a balanced report, if one area was going to have more than another. At that time, we also met, and when I say we, it was the CIOs, it was the program directors, myself. And we created timelines. At that time, we didn't know. When we got it in July, we weren't sure what our submission date would be. So we also created timelines and started gathering some data. Some questions came up when we had a new C&I director and bringing her on board and trying to catch her up that I really didn't have answers for. So we did have a phone conference with Kate Turner and Ashley Metzger. Those were two of the representatives that had come down for the on-site visit in January. They did provide clarification on a brand new template that's going to be used for the new plan. I did share the link with you in case anybody's interested in going to that link to see the plan. It does have several categories at the bottom of it that you can see are very lengthy and very detailed. During this time, the data has been collected. The state assessment results have come in. We are still waiting on the PBMAS data to come in. But all of that information is necessary for us before we can actually start a planning team and start creating the plan. So that's the part that everybody's working on right now, in addition to staff development and getting ready for school. In that conversation, TA did instruct us as a district to please use our state assessment data and to please use the PBMAS data when we considered our plan of action. Again, as I mentioned, there are 33 required actions listed on the report. From those required actions, we will form 4 to 5 problem statements. Those problem statements will be part of the targeted improvement plan, and they will be developed thoroughly to include the root cause, the annual goals, and the strategies for each one of those problem statements by quarter. A committee will be formed following the same process as last year to assist in the development of the targeted improvement plan. These committees include program directors, the campus administrators, teachers, parents, and community stakeholders. For instance, last year we had a problem statement that circled around the CTE. Well, we had community members, teachers from that department. We had, of course, the director. We had parents with students in that program. So we are very targeted about getting people with a vested interest to create the targeted improvement plan, the strategies, and then to monitor it. Okay, 33 required actions. Everything that's remaining, there is a new component in the targeted improvement plan this year. It's called post-visit intervention component. Actually, all 33 actions are listed on there. Next to there, it will ask you, is this part of your plan, or is this just an ongoing review? It's like a little drop-down box. So even though all 33 are being monitored by TEA, we're focusing on 4 or 5 to create the plan. All the rest, TEA will schedule a conference call every month, and all of those come up every month. The corrective action plan also needs to be developed. We did have 2 violations that were noted in the report, as Dr. Rios mentioned earlier. And both of those, because we were cited for them as violations, we do have to have a corrective action plan for both of those. I can tell you that one of them was failure to provide instruction in the medium of a student's first language along with instruction in English. That's the one that Dr. Rose referred to earlier. The second one is exiting students from the bilingual ESL program who are not proficient, and that came off of the PBMAS report. The presentation for the completed targeted improvement plan is scheduled for our next school board meeting, which is on September 21st. And a week later, on September 28th, our plan is scheduled to be submitted to TEA. In our discussion, I do want to point out that even though we had 33 indicators, they felt like the report was written or the observations were made in January, and they are very aware that a lot of our 33 required actions we've already started working on. So that was just a point that they brought up in the last phone conversation. Any questions?
Board members, do we have any questions?
What is the follow-up?
I'm sorry?
What is the follow-up from them for the corrective action?
The report will be due on September 28th, and then they will schedule phone conferences.
Okay, to see how we're doing?
Yes, sir. And, you know, in those phone conferences, in my experiences from the past, they ask for specific people to be there. They actually send a list of what they're going to be focusing on. So, for instance, if it's going to be secondary, they'll ask for, you know, the CIO for secondary. If it's going to be focusing on just curriculum instruction, they'll ask for that director. A lot of times, many more people come to the table, but they are pretty specific as to what it is that they want to target.
Did you have a comment?
As well, make a closing comment when there's no more questions.
I do have a question.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes, sir.
I have a question for you, Ms. Gomez. I understand the bilingual office pretty much, and I'm talking about staff,
Yes, sir.
pretty much has been disseminated among the different programs?
Yes.
So who will be taking the bulk of the questions from TA?
Just like with the targeted improvement plan last year, I did lead it at that time. I also led the on-site visit in January. So I am the lead point of contact, but again, Mr. Mesa, it's going to depend on who it is that they want to speak to during their phone conversations. When we do have our meetings and our planning meetings, for instance, there'll be a room with maybe 8 different tables, 8 different groups looking at different data and coming up with a problem statement. All of that has to be put into the plan. And in order for instruction to stay focused on instruction, I will be taking the lead on making sure that all of that gets included into the plan. But as far as the monitoring piece, they will ask at any point in time, and they will tell us who they want to speak to.
Because I guess one of my biggest concerns is bilingual teachers never have enough material, instructional material. There used to be a place where they could check out either equipment or resources from that department, correct?
Yes, sir.
Where can they request that equipment now and resources?
We've actually already held that meeting, and all of that will be transferred over to the CNI department. We've met with Ms. Yanakani on the budget, Dr. McDonald on the processes. Velma Martinez, which was the lead secretary for the bilingual department, has been reassigned to the curriculum and instruction department. So teachers will, as a matter of fact, probably have more access, I would think, because it's going to be in correlation with anything else that's out there. But you're right, sirs, that was a big concern, and we did already hold a meeting to make sure that there is a process in place.
So I guess one question leads to another.
Yes, sir.
Does TA know that this has occurred?
Actually, I do communicate with them almost on a monthly basis on different things, and I think that's the reason that they pointed out that even though there's 33 required actions, they're very aware that probably before they even left in January, we were already making corrective or taking corrective measures to address a lot of the needs.
Yes, I'm not talking about the 33 corrective actions, but in
The
my
bilingual
opinion-
department?
In my opinion, if they set a program for violations, whether there's 2 major and
Yes, sir.
31 minor,
Yes.
you would think that instead of doing away with the department, you would somehow make it stronger.
They are very aware of it.
They are aware of it.
Yes, sir. And that conversation actually has come up several times. There has not been a negative comment from them. They're here to support us in any way, and it was, it did come through with the bilingual think tank. So it wasn't somebody coming on board and saying this is what we need to do. These were actual teachers who said this is, what we were doing wasn't working. So we really need to try something different. But all along the way, we have kept them updated.
And the reason I ask those questions is because we have seen in the past where somebody does take care of the paperwork, one campus, and then you compare it, let's say LPACs
Yes.
and required documentation. It was found, in great order in one campus, and the other campus, no dates for either tests that were administered to determine the level of proficiency for that student, or LPACs, or you name it. So who's going to monitor those things?
That's actually very exciting because what we've done is we've split funded Mrs. Leyva. Mrs. Leyva was helping me with the parental component, which is a huge component now under the new state assessment accountability. And she was helping me 20% with migrants. Because of the 6 advocates that we were able to hire last year, I really don't not have a need for her to help with the migrant portion any longer, and that freed up some times. She used to work in the bilingual department. She has an administrative background, and we also felt that the consistency wasn't there from campus to campus for whatever the reason. So she has been tasked well, we did create a new job description, but if it goes through, she has been tasked to coming up with a process so that every campus is following the same steps, so that we have all the paperwork, that the timelines are being met, because of course that's my department, the compliance. So it goes hand in hand with not only meeting the compliance, but also making sure that all the campuses are doing exactly the same thing. So that is part of one of the exciting things that's going to happen, is that we will have an additional administrative type person that's going to help all 12 campuses, 13 campuses, to make sure that everything is in line, on time, and following the same process, because that has been a big concern for every administrator in the district.
And please understand my position, because, every time we either reassign principals
Yes, sir.
or assistant principals, I always have the question,
Yes.
have they been trained? All these new people that are coming in on documentation and what they need to keep in order. And so that's an ongoing problem because of either transfers from one campus to another, or new
true.
staff that are coming in that perhaps don't have the experience, but somebody's going to be available to train these new administrators, right?
Definitely. There's already a training schedule for September the 1st for all the LPAC chairs in the district, and that will include Mrs. Leiva.
But I'm saying campus principals.
Yes,
New.
all the new ones. Anybody who's an LPAC chair, Mr. Mesa, will be getting the training.
And again, I ask these questions because, I've heard monitoring, since back then, 20 years ago. And yet, we come to a report from TA and we find that it's not being monitored. So that's why I ask those questions.
They're all very good questions, and I just want to reassure you that actually everything you've asked has been discussed, because it is a big concern of the administration also. Principals tell us the same things. I have a new assistant principal, but, maybe something didn't come through, or so they want to make sure that everybody is trained also.
Thank you.
Dr. Rios?
I had asked the board presidents to let me make a closing comment when the questions were done, and it was, Mr. Messa's question was directly to that. I know that changing the bilingual department, it appears as if we're dismantling it, but nothing could be closer to the truth. As we look at districts that are highly successful with bilingual students, they're highly successful because their curriculum department is the bilingual department. Unfortunately, historically here in the district, we've either not had a bilingual department. I know that was an issue the first time I experienced a TA visit about 15 years ago here in this district. Another example is we haven't had a viable bilingual curriculum. And by bringing the bilingual curriculum and making it part of the curriculum department and charging our director and curriculum coordinators with the task of overseeing it, the curriculum department, in fact, becomes the bilingual department, which is a lot bigger with a lot more resources. If we look at the history, there's been one director and 2 strategists, or one director and 3 strategists, and to expect that one director and 3 strategists for 24% of the student population would be able to do everything that a curriculum instruction department does, well, that's just not going to happen, and it hasn't happened for years. So the thinking, the strategy is that we've expanded the role of the curriculum department, but more importantly, expanded the bilingual department so we can fully cover all of the needs of the students. The ESL strategists, we had 2 on board. Now, transitioning, and that's a job description that we'll be providing later on today, transitioning the current instructional coaches to bilingual ESL instructional coaches. It just increases the support that we're going to give. They'll also be trained on some of the compliance issues. We think that it's going to be a tremendous support for the department. And now that we've finished the curriculum documents for a regular curriculum, and I know the curriculum coordinators will want to shoot me. Not that it frees up any time because they're already overwhelmed, but it certainly frees up time from what we had last year to be able to do some of this. And we're going to see some very positive growth within 2 years. We're excited about it, and we just ask for people's patience as we move forward with it. I think Ms. Gomez has done a tremendous job in being the contact person with TA. We've been able to get good feedback both ways, and I certainly appreciate your work, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Gomez.
question, Madam Chairman.
Ms. Gomez?
Can we go back to that slide you
Yes,
just
sir.
turned off? I guess that last one.
The last one?
I'm a little confused. That's okay, I'm usually confused. All right, so there are 33 required actions.
Yes.
So at this time, the district has taken appropriate steps to address those 33 required actions.
At this time, we have disseminated the required actions to, I guess, subcategories or subdepartments. We have not taken action on all of them because we're still needing to form committees to figure out of all those 33, which 4 or 5 do we actually want to focus on as a targeted improvement plan, not just a monitoring component. For instance, if I may, Mr. Garabedian, one of the things was, do we have enough teachers with a bilingual endorsement? Well, you know, we put that as a problem statement. It's really in small isolation when you compare it to some of the bigger issues that we had. But if we're monitoring it on a monthly basis and checking with that department to see what it is they're doing and providing TA with an update to say we've attended so many campuses to recruit, we have increased a stipend, what is it that we have done, then we are in compliance with that particular one. So to answer your question, no, sir, not all of them have actions at this point.
Okay. Can we go to the slide that says what's been accomplished and
Yes, sir.
implemented?
Yes.
On that first bullet,
Yes.
the second bullet under the first bullet, says a preliminary report was received on June 24th, 2015. Did I miss something? Because mine is June the 15th. This is the same report, correct?
Maybe it was June the 15th.
I mean,
I have the 24th on mine. And I'm trying to remember back. We got the initial letter, and then we had some time to respond to them.
Right.
And I'm thinking our response must have been on June 24th.
Okay.
So I do stand corrected. I believe you're
I
right.
just want to make sure I'm
No,
looking
I
at
believe,
the right
no, you did not.
document.
We
Okay.
received one, we had 10 days to respond, and I believe that was our response date.
Okay, so on page 15 of the report dated June 15th, it mentions, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this,
Yes, sir.
on the next steps, that the district will submit the target improvement plan with the CAP, Corrective Action Plan, to TEA by July 27th,
That's correct.
2015. So as far as like the use of an updated template and these discussions, the district's in compliance with that.
We are in compliance, and what happens is, we spoke to them at that time because the template was not available. We had been told by TA that it would be available, and it had not been available. We have communication on what's called the TEAS network, and that's, only certain people have access, but all communication logs are there. So it does show that even though this original report was slated for July 27th, they actually felt that we needed to use our state assessment results and our PBMAS results, therefore extending our deadline. They were very specific that they didn't just want a targeted improvement plan, they did want it to include those two areas.
Okay, so the corrective action plan will develop as these committees work through it? That's what I'm understanding, what you're going to bring back in about a month?
Yes, the targeted improvement plan will be part of what the committees bring together. The corrective action plan, Mr. Garabedian, is just for the 2 citations. It's actually a separate plan. You'll have the targeted improvement plan with 4 or 5 statements. You have the post-visit intervention plan with all the remaining statements, and then you have a corrective action plan with the 2 bilingual violations.
Okay, so at this time, is there anything pending that either through communication or submission with TEA that has not been done?
No, sir, we are totally in compliance. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that they spoke about was when we were looking at the deadline for the September deadline, they asked us, will that give you enough time? Well, of course, we want to speed it up because this is going to be our plan for the next school year. So we didn't really want to wait too long, but we did have to wait for the PBMAS report. But one of the things we were very specific about was that we wanted enough time to present it to the board. And that was the reason that we did give them the board meeting date, and they gave us 1 week to correct anything that the board felt needed correction before we submitted.
Can you tell me, in this report, where TEA says to consolidate resources?
No, sir, not in the written report.
But the written report is official. This
Yes,
is
sir.
what the district acts upon,
Yes.
so it's not in here.
And I did question that, sir.
What was their response?
Their response was that that was something that they were suggesting to us. That was something that they brainstormed with us. That was something that came up in conversation for good practice. But by no way were they going to tell us that we had to do it. Therefore, they did not include it in the report.
There are board meetings that stick in my mind. One of them was the meeting of February the 16th, 2015.
Yes, sir.
And I remember distinctly that coming up on a number of points in that discussion, that this was something that TEA was strongly encouraging, was recommending. In fact, it's on the memo that was in the packet that night. But it doesn't show up in the report.
No, sir.
Okay.
And for that reason, when I showed this preliminary report, those were some of the questions that we actually didn't agree with the report when it first came out. And we actually said we don't agree because, we informed our board based on the conversations that we had over a course of a week. Hundreds of people were involved in that audit. And over that course of a week, we received a lot of information plus the final report on Friday. And yet, when the official one came out, mind you, I can tell you without a doubt that I was told verbally, I didn't put it on that memo, but I was told verbally that this was highly recommended.
Like on this slide here.
Yes.
All this slide says is possible need to consider consolidation.
Right. That was when we questioned it.
Now, this slide was from the exit discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. It says possible need to consider.
Consolidation.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mesa?
If I may, could you, I guess, clarify certified staff? Does that mean standard certified, which means bilingual certification through your regular teacher certification for these bilingual teachers at the newcomer academy? Let's say. They're not teachers that challenge the tests.
Yes, sir.
There are some teachers that challenge the bilingual certification?
Bilingually certified, so they have their EC6 generalist and their 2 bilingual, their supplement and then their oral proficiency.
Okay,
To be fully bilingually
I
certified.
guess maybe I need to restate my question.
Okay.
When TEA came and did the audit,
Yes, sir.
they, can you read the statement there on certified personnel?
If I could find it, it did talk about, it was at the very beginning. Required action number 2 says to continue efforts to increase the number of teachers on staff with bilingual endorsements and ESL endorsements. In our conversation with them, the reason that we needed clarification, we didn't understand how we were supposed to come up with a targeted improvement plan when we're just evaluating things. Because if you look through the report, a lot of it says evaluate this or evaluate that. We were looking for quantitative, and they said no, it would be qualitative. So those were the types of items, Mr. Mesa, that we would be putting into the post-visit intervention, where we would have those monthly roundtable discussions and be able to say, this is how many teachers we have, this is what kind of shortage we've turned in, and work with them to provide information in that capacity. But again, it just says continue the efforts. So our intervention would be to continue those efforts.
I still don't understand, because again, my question has to do with properly trained teachers on, let's say, reading skills, whether it's with a regular ed student or the bilingual ed student. And I know there was a strong effort on this administration to have teachers that, if, let's say, are working at the high school, do not have their ESL endorsement, to go and take the test and pass the test so they can get that little paper. But my understanding was TA came back and said they might have that paper, but they're really not ESL certified or trained. I mean, they challenged the test and they passed that little test, but they're not trained to be ESL teachers.
And it also talks about continuing our efforts to provide staff development for sheltered instruction, for inclusion. They're not just limiting the staff development to just our ESL, but any at-risk type student. So you'll find that in the report also, where it says, please continue this, or not please, but continue to work on the staff development and provide staff development to address strategies, good practices,
Right.
best practices.
Right. No, I guess,
Separate from the
well,
endorsement.
I know in elementary we have enough teachers that are standard certified, ESL bilingual certified rather. Where the issue was in secondary, where we did not have enough ESL.
Right.
Let's say middle school,
Yes,
sixth
sir.
grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, and beyond.
And in the EIP grant, we did have a strong push. We did have a strong push to get the ESL certification, because that's the first component of being in compliance, is having that teacher have that ESL certification, the credentials to be there, and then to provide the strong staff development to assist her with the resources and the staff development.
Mr. Messi, you're correct. You're right. They pass a test, and that little piece of paper doesn't make them the expert teachers. But earlier in the summer, we planned to provide a very aggressive staff development plan for our teachers. And starting this week, QTEL, the program that we recommended and the board approved, starts this week. So we know that we have a long ways to go in providing the training, but we have planned for it, and we're excited to be starting that training this week. Because you're right, that piece of paper, even though we made great strides, I think we added over 30 ESL certified teachers, doesn't entirely make them experts, doesn't even begin to make them experts, just begin to make us compliant. The next step is providing the staff development, and we're well on our way to doing that. QTEL should already be in town to start the training tomorrow or Wednesday, right? Tomorrow.
Okay, I guess that was the response I was looking for. They did say, you show it on paper, but really they're not trained.
If I may. I don't want to repeat everything that Dr. Rios just stated, but you are correct that secondary has been a big issue in making sure that our staff is trained to handle these type of kids. So what we've done was we've formed teams, sheltered teams, and these are the teams that are actually going to be in training tomorrow through Friday. So you're correct. The ESL certification doesn't mean anything unless we have the staff development. So it starts tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions,
I have another question.
sir?
And this is in general, not specific to bilingual, but still the report on page 4 of the report.
Yes, sir.
On the required actions, it says evaluate the role of instructional coaches to determine if students' academic performance has improved. And on page 5 of the report, under required actions, number 5, says evaluate the role of curriculum coordinators and instructional coaches in increasing student performance. What have we done in that regard?
I can answer, but
No, it's the same question that was asked before, and I really wish I had a different answer, because it's hard to quantify the work that was done by the instructional coaches and the curriculum coordinators. However, if we look at the overall student growth, and we'll show some hard evidence in a little bit, and we look at all the curriculum documents, all of the trainings that have been provided, I wish I could say CNI provided X amount of trainings, and they directly related to this number of student growth. Not only do we not have the methodology, we don't have the resources to provide that type of investigation. However, through observation, we can see that the interaction with the now existing curriculum has resulted not only in having all campuses meet state accountability, but particularly in Index 4, which is exciting to see that all the students grew. We don't have a way of quantifying the growth. I wish we had the methodology to do it. But if we look at the hundreds of curriculum documents, the number of lessons that have been developed, the student engagement, then I would say that it is very effective. But again, if I had a way of isolating to those specific actions, I would do it. But I really, and that was our complaint to TA, how do we quantify this? Because we can only evaluate based on observation, qualitative rather than quantitative investigation. And our qualitative investigation is that they were entirely successful. They did a tremendous amount of work. But again, sir, those are just qualitative, and I know that we live in a quantitative world.
That's all for now.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Gomez.
Thank you.
Okay, on to facilities construction update, Mr. Mike Salinas and Mr. Israel Carrera.
Good evening, Board President Lozano, Superintendent Dr. Rios, members of the board. Again, is Carrera, Construction Manager. I have a short presentation of the projects that are ongoing and the ones that have been completed. First one we have here is the Caldwell renovation of restrooms in B Wing. They're substantially completed. We will, though, have them ready for the first day of school. We started on these because these were the single restrooms in those classrooms. We do have monies to start the group restrooms. In fact, we've started the new lighting installation in those group restrooms, and so we'll continue throughout this year to get those completed also. The next is the intercom system. We installed them at Del Rio Freshman, Del Rio High School, Caldwell, Chavita, and SGLC. These are state-of-the-art intercoms. We do have training planned for this week tentatively for these schools. There are some wiring issues that we're going to be working with at the high school in wings 1,000, 1,100, and 1,300. The next is the Del Rio Freshman School Canopies, Phase 1 and 2. Phase 3 will begin this year, and it will be to connect B Wing to C Wing. This installation, I'm really proud of this one. Our maintenance and our painters from the district did the work, and man, it's impressive. I really like the work that they did. Del Rio High School old gym and San Felipe Memorial Middle School gym new bleachers. This is the high school, the old gym with the new bleachers, and they also redid the floors. These bleachers approximately will seat about 540 kids. The San Felipe Memorial Middle School gym new bleachers, and they would seat about approximately 430 kids. And those were completed, this was completed this weekend, and the high school was completed about 2 weekends ago. Del Rio High School roofing substantial completion. This is a finished product. There are some, I spoke to the contractor today, and there are some roofing in the inside when they were doing some penetrations from the top that they will fix those before the school starts. They'll get that done today or this week. San Felipe Memorial Middle School roof, substantial completion. These are the two wings that are not attached to the main building, such as the one you see at the bottom, and those will be painted the same type that the high school with that white covering, that white paint. The Career and Technology Education Center, it's under construction. Demolition to be completed early this week sometime. There was, however, some suspicion of asbestos. It was encountered during the demolition. Testing was done and test results were positive for asbestos. Appropriate procedures were followed and asbestos was abated and accordingly. And demolition will continue, and then they will begin site work. We're collaborating with the architect and the contractor on the number of days that they're asking for delays due to the abatement, the extra abatement that we encountered during the demolition. Then the Student Activity Center. We continue with steel framing, installation of sheetrock paneling, trenching for utilities, vent for plumbing, pad built for added footage and space. On this project, we are on schedules as of today. Now, I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
I have a quick
Mr.
question.
Garabedian.
I'm glad you got to the Cardwell restrooms. It's almost like you knew that's what I was going to ask. So we do have pretty good progress,
Yes.
substantial completion, that's what it is.
They will be completed by the end of the week on all 6 restrooms in B-Wing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Lozano, I just have a question. The fencing around the freshman gym as well? Driving up through, past the freshman campus there
In the front.
in the
We-
front?
We have run into a problem with that. We're gonna have a report to the superintendent so he can share that information with you all this Friday.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I think, are you asking the street right in front of us, or are you talking along Main Street?
No, right in front of us.
Okay, yes, we'll provide an update on Friday, Mike?
Yes, but
When did that
Right.
project start?
several months back, we run into an issue.
Mr. Mesa?
I have a question, but maybe it's coming later on. The demolition of the old Garfield?
Yes, sir, that is ongoing right now, and we will provide that on our next month's report.
Okay.
That is ongoing at this time. That's for the blended academy.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Very nice. Okay, the 2015 TEA Accountability Report presented by Administrator CNI and campus staff.
Madam President, the report, I've asked different people to participate. It's going to come in 4 phases. The first phase will be the indices reports, which will be done first by Angie, and then we will follow up with highlighting the great strides that were completed at Calderon and Lamar, and then we'll conclude with Ms. Garcia providing the next steps for continued improvement.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good evening, Madam President, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. My name is Angie Sanchez, and I am the System-Wide Testing Coordinator for the district. I am going to open up the 2015 accountability presentation on behalf of the administrators in CNI and our CIOs. First things first, we do want to just clarify the major changes that took place within the 2015 accountability. One being the exclusion, let me see, of the math grades 3 through 8 and Star A and Star Alt 2 assessments from the 4 indices and the distinction designations. The second one being the prerequisites to have a met standard requirement, which in years past required the 4 indices to be met. This year, we have Index 3, Index 4, and either Index 1 or 2. And then, of course, 3, our Index 1 target changed from 55 to 60. The 2015 accountability ratings are based on 4 performance indexes. 1, student achievement, measures a satisfactory student performance across all subject tests, meaning the total number of assessments administered with as a denominator, with the total number of assessments passed as a numerator, would give us a target score. And the index target score currently shifted from 55 to 60. Where district landed in terms of Index 1, we see the upward trend in elementary where we have between a 3 to 13 point gain within all elementary campuses. Do you have any questions? No?
So we're looking at two different trends. I mean, what we have here on the handout, unless I'm getting even blinder by the minute, this is 3 years. That's just merely 2 years, correct?
Right.
Okay.
We're showing you the last 2 years, 2014-15.
Why did we get 3 years on the handout and 2 years on the overhead?
Chair Beaton, they shared with me, and because of the movement in it, we can certainly provide it. We provided the data as was requested for 3 years, but we have provided that data to y'all before. But for terms of the comparison, this is the way we provided. We can certainly bring it back. I think the trends are going to be the same as are shown in the data, where we dropped last year and we made increases this year. And in most cases, you'll see that the increases parallel the achievement of 2 years ago or exceeded. And I think you'll see the same in the report.
Right, but I think what he's looking at is the individual. We did pass this as an additional resource for you just to have, in addition to the information on the PowerPoint. This actually breaks down our scores per grade level, per assessment at each campus district-wide. So what you're seeing here will not match our index scores up on the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Got it? Okay, this is our secondary Index 1 scores for student achievement, where we see the trend that we've been talking about, the gains. A couple of points here or there, but for the most part, we show that upward trend. Index 2 measures student progress, not passing. This is the index that targeted the No Child Left Behind, making sure that every student from the bottom up is showing growth academically. The percent of students who met progress or exceeded progress are calculated. So indexes are actually based on points. So we have a student who met the growth that the state anticipated, we get the 1 point. If they exceeded, we get 2 points, and ultimately they find a percentage. For Index 2 to take place, we're looking at a previous assessment required to the current assessment to see if there was growth between 4th grade reading to 5th grade math, 3rd grade reading to 4th grade math. Any questions? Nope. The index target was set at the 5th percentile by campus type, and the way they find this particular target is if there's 100 campuses per se. The 5th percentile would be the 5th school. So whatever The sixth campus ranked highest to lowest, their target score would be the elementary target score. Okay. Do you want me to repeat that again? Fifth percentile. Let's say we have 100 elementary schools in the state of Texas. They'll rank the highest elementary, by campus type, elementary schools rating all the way down to the lowest. So the fifth percentile would be the fifth campus. So the sixth campus's score would become our target score. Yes? Okay, so here are elementary student progress data chart. And then we have the secondary. The zero here represents the fact that in 2014, we did not have an index 2 measure for high school because there was no way to measure two different assessments that were taken in English 1 as separated as reading and writing that were combined into one assessment. Okay. Index 3, closing the performance gaps, measures the percent of students who scored a level 2 phase 1 or above and the percent of students who scored level 3 at advanced. Student groups are economically disadvantaged, and the two lowest performing groups from 2014 per campus with no fewer than 25 students in both reading and math. These targets are set by the state. These are Index 3 data ratings. And then we have secondary. Index 4 measures post-secondary readiness. We're looking at up to 4 indicators per campus. 1, STAR post-secondary readiness, which requires a level 2 final score on 2 or more assessments unless only one test was administered. For example, a first-time EOC or 11th graders who only take one EOC, like U.S. history. 2, graduation rate. 3, recommended high school participation or distinguished advanced participation rate. And then our post-secondary readiness are using our 2013-14 graduates. And then the targets listed below. Here's our Index 4 data chart for Index 4. These are all our elementaries. And then our secondary. Our next slide recognizes our campuses that received the 2015 distinction designations by the state. The same process is taking place here. We have campus comparison groups. Each campus within our district is compared to a campus with similar size, demographics, and they're grouped with them, and what they do is they take the highest to lowest, and if you were the top quartile, you would get that recognition awarded as a distinction designation.
Can you read the actual distinctions again?
Okay, the first one is top quartile for student progress, basically looking at our Index 2. And then top quartile closing the achievement gaps, which is Index 3. And then academic achievement in reading and ELA. The next one is academic achievement in math. You see a lot of the NAs since there was no standard for math and they were excluded from accountability. in elementary, that's where the NAs are there.
I'm sorry, I meant highlight the campuses.
Oh, I'm sorry.
in the area.
So Lonnie Green received, let me start at the top. Buena Vista Elementary received academic achievement in science and post-secondary readiness. Then Lonnie Green, academic achievement in reading and ELA. And then high school, academic achievement in science. Are there any questions?
There's no questions, do we have to have them come up there?
Absolutely. Do we have questions, though? No?
There will be.
Okay. And congratulations to those campuses that received distinction designations. Great work.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to share our achievements this evening. We would also like to thank you for your patience and support throughout this process of improvement of teaching and student learning at our campus this year. I will start the presentation, then followed by our instructional coach interventionist, Allison Mercier, our coordinator, Maite Solis, and our teacher representative, Carrie Parsons. Well, I wish I could tell you that it was just one thing that helped us this year, but it was a accumulation of many things: communication, relationships, an effective master schedule, some non-negotiables, data-driven instruction, parent and community engagement, and of course, improved campus culture and environment. And before anything can be done effectively and monitored efficiently, we had to make sure we had communicated our message. We had to ensure that all stakeholders, teachers, instructional coach, administration, every person, students as well, were involved in that process. We had weekly meetings, administration with our instructional coach, our collaborative team meetings with our cluster leaders, our team leaders, and then with our clusters themselves, and we wanted to ensure that all the information was shared full circle. That was one thing that we did monitor and do efficiently this past year. Relationships. We did push a lot on relationship building, not just with our students, but within our staff. We had to be able to trust, we had to be able to have honest conversations, and those two items go hand in hand. As difficult as some discussions and conversations may be, we had to make sure that we were being honest and truthful for us to move forward and to improve teaching and learning at our campus every day, and definitely monitoring those systems every day. You go home and you just ensure that you reflect, and you just kind of ensure that, well, what we did was right. We talked, we shared, we collaborated, and was everybody involved? And yes, they were. Now for Mrs. Mercier.
Okay, I'm just going to speak for a few minutes about the master schedule that we developed. With the master schedule, we did keep a special eye on our bilingual students. In our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classrooms, we had our bilingual students grouped by proficiency. So our lower proficiency students were grouped together, and they had a smaller teacher-to-student ratio. In addition to that, our higher performing bilingual students were able to be mainstreamed into a regular classroom and rotated with their peers. In addition to that, our special education students were grouped together. This allowed for the teacher from the special ed department to come in and provide services specifically with those students, and also provided for time for the aides to come in and work with the students on a more individualized basis. This also allowed for us to do a really good job with our inclusion. We had very few students pulled out in a special ed classroom. The vast majority of them were in our regular classrooms in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We also had classroom schedules that included guided instruction. All of our teachers pulled our kids into guided groups on a daily basis. They also had a separate intervention time, so they were able to focus on the kids and their needs at 2 separate times at least throughout the day. We also had computer labs that were open before and after school for interventions. So the students were able to come when they arrived, when they get off the bus. They were able to come in, work on the computer labs, on the different programs, iStation, Study Island, and then report to their classrooms when the time allowed. We also did have that available for them after school, in addition to the normal tutorials that we provide. In our 5th grade classrooms, we did receive a grant for iPads, and so we had 30 minutes of daily intervention for the students on their iPads. Some of that did take place during the guided instruction and the intervention time, so the teachers were able to focus on the students in need, while the remainder of the students were given activities such as the iPads. In addition, the students had iPad homework that they did on a regular basis, and that was in our 5th grade classrooms. Our kinder through 2nd teachers did help by providing interventions after school. So we had teachers who had taught in the upper grades before and were very comfortable. They were able to work with the students after school, which allowed for our tutorial groups to be much smaller. Lastly, we had our dyslexia and our gifted and talented teacher provide interventions to our Tier 3 students. So the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade Tier 3 students received special instruction through Read Naturally. And that was something that was done by our dyslexia and our gifted and talented teacher.
Good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about non-negotiables, and that was something that I can say that Ms. Murayda really emphasized and really stood true to as she led her team this year. One of the biggest things was just staying faithful to the process of planning protocol. Over the course of the first year of implementation, we scheduled planning protocol based on what we thought was going to be the best fit. This past year, one of the things that Ms. Murayda led was the collaboration with the teachers. How did you feel about when you should plan, and how does that look within your schedule? And so that constant communication with the teachers regarding planning protocol and just changing their scheduled planning time. The other thing we looked at is just explicit guided instruction, and that really was the focus of what we did at Calderon, whether it was the instructional coach leading conversations, whether it was myself as an advocate leading conversations with teachers, or even the administrators, leadership teams. Everybody spoke explicit guided instruction, and that was placed in that master schedule and just really focused and emphasized during that time. We provided additional staff for assisting the most high-risk students. So an example that I can give you is Mrs. Mercier, as an instructional coach, spent a lot of time in 5th grade really leading and developing the guided instruction approach for 5th grade teachers. I spent a lot of my time focused on 4th grade ELA, and so in collaboration with the teachers, we would either model, mentor, coach, or pull a small group during that instructional time. So when teachers felt like guided instruction may be something that they didn't quite grasp, we were always there to support them through that process, guided them along the way, and then of course always with that intention of making sure that students were also serviced during that teaching time for teachers. Instructional coach support, like I said, Mrs. Mercier just spent a lot of time just really providing interventions for students, not just with 5th grade, but the focus the second semester was 5th grade, but definitely during 3rd, 4th as well. Mentoring and modeling of lessons for teachers, ensuring that teachers had resources. One of the biggest components of her day, she would have to schedule some time where she could say, okay, if my 2nd grade cluster has gone to planning and they've decided that these are resources that they need, then I will have to find some time to make sure that I can provide something for them so that they can lead those really focused, targeted lessons. Provided ongoing staff development. This was definitely key. The school district provides staff development for teachers in the fall and in the spring. But one thing that we realized at Calderon Elementary is that we needed more than just those designated times. And so a lot of the times through planning protocol, there was an embedded professional development through our CPT meetings, one meeting a week where we would look at data and then determine what kind of professional development do teachers need at that designated time. Professional development took place whether it was during faculty meetings, during planning protocol sessions, or any time in between with the instructional coach going in and directly facilitating some of those trainings within that classroom setting.
And then, of course, the last thing was conducting learning walks. I can say that at Calderon Elementary, we were very faithful to that learning walk process that allowed teachers to see each other in practice, and that's one thing that we focus on. We have a lot of strengths within our district, so the best approach for that is allowing other teachers who struggle with particular concepts or teaching components to see what it looks like in best practice within their own peers. It really just helps develop that sense of pride. It develops that sense of team, and that was something that was a big focus at Calderon Elementary. The last one is data-driven instruction, and what I can say about this is I've worked with Calderon for 3 years now as a member of the curriculum team, and one of the things that we've always focused on is data. Mrs. Muraida does lead with data, but this year the focus was not just on providing data on a 6-week basis. The focus was primarily on student growth on a daily basis. What did our lesson plans look like today? How did it work in the classroom? And then the next day, what did they look like and how can we improve that process? And so there was a lot of disaggregation of data, and this conversation was led by so many, whether it was the cluster leader leading conversations within their clusters, the instructional coach leading the data talks, or even the administrative team. We did look and focus on 3-week assessments. We developed 3-week assessments so that there was a targeted formative assessment at that time for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. There was also, of course, the 6-week assessment and the benchmark data. But looking at those 3-week assessments, what I can give as an example is with our bilingual students, we profiled them and we monitored them at their proficiency level. We really liked the way that approach looked on a folder where teachers would track their students on a formative basis. And so we turned around and also tracked all of our students based on that 6-week summative assessment. So teachers were always looking at individual students and tracking them. And then, of course, finally, as Mrs. Mercier mentioned, iStation data by 6 weeks, study island progress reports, all of those things were looked at on a consistent basis. This just helped us keep track of where we are, where we want to go, and whether there was something in the way, and if we needed to modify or adapt, we were able to do so through collaboration and through communication.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about our parent community involvement. 3 groups that we have that we've tried to work in the community with is one, the staff at Laughlin Aerospace. It's been really nice with some of the students. They don't always have that extra person at home to help them out. So it's been really nice. We submit a list, and they're really good about trying to pair up the kids with who would be best for them. It's just another time they have someone there to talk to, someone to listen to them and encourage them that's outside of school. HEB has been a really big partner with us, and we've tied that into the Literacy Night bullet at the bottom. We tried to get away last year to get a lot more parents in, and so at one of our literacy nights, HEB paired up with us, and we offered dinner. The parents came. They gave books. Every single child that came walked away with the book. It also gave parents a way that when they didn't know how to help their kids at home, we were giving them trainings. They got to pick from all the trainings offered, and they can come and sit in the sessions. They either had a make and take, or the teacher gave them websites or other resources they could use at home. Having the Del Rio High School student volunteers come in was a benefit to both the teacher and the students. Sometimes we couldn't always get to that extra child that needed that one-on-one or someone to sit there. So knowing that we had that student come in to sit there with them, and sometimes the student felt a little more comfortable with them if they had an issue, and it was another set of hands, and even just to sit there and have an extra person for the child to read to. Our PAW Club, the Parents Are Wonderful, was our way that we tried to get more parents in to volunteer. We have a parent room for them. We want them to feel welcome and able to come into the campus, and this was their way they can contribute to their students' education, whether it be helping the office, helping the teachers, helping our parental aid, whatever we needed. It's not up here, but one of our teachers was just awarded this morning the Innovative Grant for the Watchdog program, the Dads of Great Students, which is going to be really wonderful at our campus. I've been at a campus that had it before, but being in the area that we're in, having any extra male role model in there will tie back in with the Laughlin, that there's just another person for them. If they don't have that home life, it's really going to help. Just there's more people to encourage them and build the relationships that Ms. Morita was talking about. And then those literacy nights, as I said, we try to do one in the fall and the spring, all grade levels. And again, we make it things that the parents get to choose what they want the most of, what they feel like they need help in. Also, two other things that we did not put up there. We tried last year to think of how to get more parents involved in the beginning of school. We know a lot of parents dread coming to the school for open house, the parking. They just feel like it's a hassle. So last year we started the picnic in the park. And this way we were going out into the community. So now we actually have ours tomorrow from 7 to 8 at the Roy Muski's Park. And it's really nice. It's very informal. Every grade level's under pavilion with the sign. You can find out who's your child's teacher. That's where they're given all the information in one nice packet. Kids are playing. It's just a very informal setting, and we want them to see, well, we're willing to come out to where they're at. They don't always have to come to us. The parents, we've got great feedback, and they love it. And then it's a way that a few days later, then they can come into school, they can see the classroom, bring anything, ask any questions about the paperwork. And today, this is the second time all the teachers took a bus ride around the neighborhood that our school services. We had a roster with our kids' addresses so that you could kind of get a little idea of maybe where they came from. So if they come with issues in the morning, stress, maybe no materials, something happened at home, you got a little better feel for maybe like what their home life was, seeing where they lived at. Then as far as our campus culture and climate goes, the Leader in Me has been a huge push that Ms. Morad actually started 2 years ago before the district bought into it. We tried to incorporate some of the vocabulary. And last year, we were one of the first campuses that did it along with the district. And our facilitator did say it normally takes about 3 years till you really see a difference. But just in the 1 year we did last year officially, you could already tell. Our behavior issues have dropped severely. The kids, the language, they're picking up the vocabulary. It's really, really been a big deal. It is the 7 Habits of Happy Kids. It's based off of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We've had the facilitator come. We just did our empowerment day, I believe, on August 6th. And it's not just for the kids. It's kind of for the teachers. Sometimes you can feel burned out or you can feel overwhelmed. And it empowers you to feel like, I can do this. I can say myself, I teach 2nd grade, and I was always, teachers, he just said, you don't want to give up any power or control, but I was amazed at how much the kids can really do if you just actually give them a chance. I couldn't believe it's hard to say that I had free time, but I couldn't believe the free time I was actually getting back in the classroom so I could actually meet with more kids on an individual basis because they took control of it. I mean, they owned everything. They could recite their mission statement that they came up with on a daily basis. They could use all the vocabulary and the habits. Like, you're not really synergizing right now. We need to think win-win. So it's really nice, and we're doing it school-wide. Our goal this year is to really try to tie it into the parents. I am part of the Lighthouse Committee. So that is our goal. We're going to meet with our facilitator again, set up an actual, timeline of what we want to reach. We don't want to do too much too soon because we really want to do it correct. So hopefully by next year, in our 3rd full year, we're really in full swing. We are doing leadership binders where the kids are accountable for their behavior, their attendance, their scores on their summatives. What goals do they want, both personally and academically? So it's really, really showing them, if this is your vision and this is your goal, how are you going to get there? It's putting a lot more on the students, a lot more responsibility, but a lot more ownership. So hopefully they don't always feel like someone's telling them what you can and can't do, what you have to do, what you shouldn't do. They're really in charge of everything, and you're basically giving the power to them. So it takes a lot. It's actually a lot better for teachers. I mean, it might seem like a lot of work, but the students are really, a lot more accountable, and you can see it in their face. We have students doing the announcements, and you can tell where they shine. Our hope is to get more jobs school-wide for our kids just to pretty much take over and have the ownership of, hey, I might not be good at this, but I'm a really good public speaker, so you do announcements. Or I'm not really, I like to talk in the class and get in trouble. Oh, you be the greeter in the morning to anybody who comes in. So that really is our goal. And like I said, we're really going to try to get our parents into it now that hopefully they've heard their child talking about it for the last 2 years. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you. Very nicely done. Thank you so much.
So she's not here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Westlake. I had the privilege last year of being the assistant principal at Lamar Elementary and working with Maribel Flores, who, like Dr. Rios said, wasn't able to be here. But with me here tonight are these wonderful ladies, Marta Galindo, who is a curriculum coordinator, Belinda Hernandez, a third grade teacher at Lamar, and Jessica Vaz, who was the instructional coach. Having established a shared vision, a common vision for student success, our Lamar teachers, through the use of the TASTE process, were able to identify areas of needed improvement. One of those areas was the necessity to build teacher capacity. So opportunities were offered in professional development, and along with that, also the opportunity to have time to disaggregate data so that instruction would be informed. Our instructional coach and CNI coordinators were also instrumental in building capacity. They were also instrumental in building teacher capacity. Central admin and our PSP assisted also in monitoring our data and providing guidance accordingly. Campus administration met with the team leaders and teachers and our instructional coach and CNI personnel to discuss data and student progress throughout the year. So in essence, key to Lamar's success was communication and team collaboration, and I'm going to let the rest of my cohort share some information on that with you.
Planning protocol. That is the most important thing in planning among the teachers. This was a key component in student success, as it allowed the collaboration and communication with teachers, campus administrators, campus support staff, CNI coordinators, and the instructional coach to ensure consistency and fidelity to the planning process. In other words, we'd get together and we'd plan a lesson, and we would say, put yourself in the shoes of the student. Am I going to have fun with this lesson? Am I going to learn something out of this lesson? There was one of the stories we did was on Sean White. The kids were, who's that, Miss Galindo? I said, don't worry about it, guys. If you do good, if we read it, I promise you I'll show him in action doing a double twist. So all the kids were excited. See, this is the kind of lessons that the teachers have to do. And this is what we did at Lamar. We got them all excited with that. And of course I had to show them the double twist on Sean White, and all the other kids were like, I want to go to that station. I want to go to that station. But this was an everyday thing at Lamar. I mean, when Dr. Rios said, Galindo, you got Lamar, I went, yes, that's my stomping grounds. So, I mean, just to see working with fourth graders and then finally working with the third graders all year long was amazing. The creative and the engaging lessons that were developed among the teachers was surpassed anything beyond your imagination. Just watching the kids, one of them just cried and cried when I left, and that made me want to go back to the classroom, but somebody up there might not let me go. We provided for continued growth and the development of teacher capacity. That means I did a lot of mini workshops after school for parents and for the teachers. Come over, you got a free book and you got a free unit. And that, I think that is part of the success. Now I'll let my wonderful teachers talk.
I'm going to talk a little bit about planning protocol, but first, these are some of the teachers from Lamar that were right alongside me. These are the ladies who their dedication has helped us achieve what we did, because there was many phone calls, text messages, searching, researching. So without these ladies, I don't think we could have accomplished it. So I thank them. One of the things that we did with planning protocol is we focused on the components. What is that really? What does it all really mean? Scaffolding. Okay, so we know that our kids are third grade students. Okay, we knew that. This was a standard. This is where they were supposed to be, and this is where the star is asking them to be. Now, reality, our students may have been down here. So that's what we did. We looked at our reality. Now, Once we got that, we started scaffolding lessons, meaning we started with a basic lesson, making sure these students understood, the vocabulary, the concepts. What does cause and effect really mean? How do they apply it? So those are some of the things that we started doing. We scaffold. We could have started with a first, second grade lesson, and we kept building up and kept building up until they achieved the level of application. Strategic questioning. That was a big thing. You know, sometimes students are yes, no, those are the way they answered questions. What we did is we tried to get them to answer open-ended questions. We needed response. We needed feedback because we had to analyze their way of thinking. We needed to know what they were thinking so we can kind of help them change that way of thinking to achieve success. Vocabulary. We knew that the students of Lamar did not have very many experiences. You know, that is our reality. So how are we going to give it to them? How are we going to give them this vocabulary that they needed so much? So, I mean, when they hear words as inferencing, graphic sources, justify, they were just like, you know, it was difficult. So we had to come up with activities and show videos. You know, they didn't know what a state fair was. So what did? We did poetry. We brought in things for them to smell, to use their senses, and then Ms. Galindo would show a video. So we saw the Texas State Fair. Now they know who Big Tex is. So in our guided instruction, once we went through our data desegregation day, that day was a big changer for us because we did get the data, but we had to know how to read that data. Once we understood the data and how to read it and where it would best benefit us, then we could group our students accordingly. And then we did the guided instruction. Once we had the students in these groups, now we were able to work with them closely. We worked in small groups. Ms. Galindo was one of the people in my classroom, and you know, we were teaching lessons, doing stations, doing task cards, but also it was a quick check for understanding. Here we are, we're having a discussion, we're seeing that the kids are understanding the concept, which was the most important. Did they understand what we were teaching? And could they apply it? So the last thing we did is we differentiated our instruction. You know, we did a lot of activities that were hands-on, as I had said. We used a lot of manipulatives. If we had to reteach, we went in. If I studied for I want to say 2 weeks on how to do a bio poem with students. Ms. Galindo came in and did it in about 15 minutes. So, you know, that was a learning experience for the students, but it was a learning experience for me, you know, which was one of the most valuable things that we can have as teachers. You know, we learn from each other also. And just the opportunity to come in here, collaborate, reteach, work together. We extended lessons. We went out in the courtyard. We did poetry stations. So it was a lot of fun. The kids got exposed to a lot of materials, a lot of vocabulary, and it was really an amazing experience because they gave Ms. Galindo and the other mentors, our administration, all of them encouraged us to keep pushing forward, to keep going forward, but we in turn as teachers encouraged our students. You know, it didn't have to be that 100 that everybody's asking for. If we saw growth, you were going to get praise for that. As Ms. Galindo said, one student cried for her. When she began with us, he could only write a few words. When she left, he wrote her a sentence. You know, so that was a big accomplishment. It might not have been the growth that we wished he would have accomplished, but he grew, and he was recognized for that. And I think that was one of the most important things that we did at Lamar. So I thank you for having the vision to do this because our students need it, and we need it as teachers. Thank you.
Okay, we had extra instructional aids actually put into the classroom this year. Instead of doing a lot of pull-out and trying small groups for interventions, our dyslexia teacher worked with the Tier 3, but the majority of our extra staff, at one time our librarian, myself, other aides and PE coaches actually went into the classroom and worked alongside the teachers, attended planning protocol, so we were all collaborating on the same page, knowing exactly what lessons would be taught, how they were going to be taught, and what students needed, what type of lessons. I also, for myself, worked with the modeling and coaching of lessons for teachers as needed, provided lots and lots of resources as the teachers requested, and then extra professional development. And then a couple of our district common goals for student success, we also had the implementation of Leader in Me, and we saw a big impact that that has already had on our students this past year. Establish high expectations. Third, fourth, and fifth grade had a lot of Saturday camps, and if they didn't do Saturday camps, they would hold after-school tutorial sessions where they had pizza for the kids, and they just kept them a couple hours after to do fun and innovative lessons, not just sitting there and doing more drill and kill. Tutorials before and after school, a lot of community involvement, collaborating among all of our staff, so they really do work together as one campus for the benefit of all of our students. That's it. Any questions?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now the next steps for continuing. A lot of the staff already touched on this, and these are 6 focuses that are very important for student success, and I will touch on each one of these slides. They mentioned planning protocol, guided instruction, also the instructional planning documents. We're going to talk about parent portal, the bilingual, and of course, collaboration. As we know, we started our planning protocol 2 years ago. This year, we're kicking off the 3rd year. The first year, we started with step 1, 2, and 3. We just wanted to go ahead and focus developing the curriculum, and we wanted to make sure that it was aligned, that it had the depth, rigor, and the specificity. Last year, we focused more on the lesson plans, on the 5E model, and checking for understanding, because we want to make sure, and the teachers want to make sure that when they deliver that lesson, that the students understand. So they check for understanding through formative assessments during their lesson. And then that's when the step 5 comes in, and that is the support for our learners. And that's something that we really want to focus on this year, is support for all learners through the guided instruction. So very important, guided instruction. SFDR CISD utilizes the gradual release model, which is the I do, you do, we do, across all contents through the means of purposeful planning, through planning protocol. Guided instruction is conducted with small, purposeful groups that have been composed based on the formative assessment that we were speaking of earlier. Teachers then guide students to increasingly complex thinking through the means of cues, prompt, scaffolded question in a small group setting. Teachers establish high expectations and provide support so that students can reach those targeted goals through focused lessons. While the teacher pulls small groups, the remaining students work in stations and or independently. When planned accordingly, an instructional support staff pulls an additional small group for that same lesson. Mrs. Diaz presented in our leadership retreat, and she prepared for the presentation. As she prepared for the presentation, she asked some of her staff members that have provided guided instruction what they thought about the guided instruction, and I would like to share some of the quotes with you. One of the teacher, Ms. Cura, says, implemented guided instruction makes learning personal to each student and allows for the interaction that is necessary to cement learning for retention and future use. It is an avenue that is going to allow students to show more progress. Another teacher, Mrs. Lopez, says, quote, small group guided instruction provides a risk-free environment to struggling students where they can develop an I can attitude. as they experience success in their learning process. And I'll share one more quote. Guided instruction time brings up the students' confidence and self-esteem, encourage them to share prior knowledge and to open up with teachers so that at the same time the teacher can focus on the student's individual needs. And that was by Mrs. Howard. Another focus that we talked about and that we saw in the diagram that was earlier is the instructional planning documents. These are key for student success. And what we're doing now is that these documents, of course, are available for teachers. We're adding resources. So when the teachers pull these documents, they can click on these hyperlinks. These are also going to be available for parents, and we'll talk about that during our parent portal. So if a parent or a teacher wants to see what they're learning in the classroom, then you look at this, and this is something that is available for them. So they can show this PowerPoint to the students, or the parents can see exactly what they're learning. And it goes through the PowerPoint. This is an example of one of the Spanish planning guides that we have. So here we put the vocabulary also in Spanish, the learning targets, and we also have some hyperlinks. So if you click here, you can get some information that the teachers can use. This is another example for a 5th grade planning document. Okay. I tried these earlier and they worked fine. So here's how to write a personal narrative. So again, more resources for teachers because we want to try and have everything available and ready for them. Something that we're trying to do is we're looking into a web-based solution that combines everything into a single user-friendly platform. So what we have is through SchoolNet, it ties the curriculum, so it creates, manages, and delivers a rigorous and consistent standard-based curriculum where the teachers can search for lesson plans, they can edit. It also has the instruction, which analyzes student data with interactive dashboards and reports, and I'll show you an example of one right now. And it also has room for assessment. And this is very good, especially for the teachers at secondary that have the one-to-one, because they can create a formative assessment, a quiz, and give it to the students. They take it on their computer, and the teacher gets the data as soon as she pulls the report. So this is what SchoolNet looks like.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Sure.
I wanted to point out that 2 years ago, Mr. Mesa, you shared this as an example for us. Unfortunately, at that point, we didn't have the curriculum documents to justify such an expense. We didn't have the assessments that we have today. So we did something in-house to create a small curriculum repository. But now that we have curriculum documents across the board, we have improved assessments. We're able to transition into this program, which is exactly the one that you shared with us 2 years ago. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it 2 years ago. It would have been a huge expense, and it would have been for naught. But now, we're absolutely moving in that direction. It's the exact program you suggested to us, and we're excited about moving this way, and we'll have more information. Right now, it's just an overview, but we're ready for it now.
And so this gives the teacher access to all data at their fingertips. As soon as they log in, they can see from the last assessment, they can filter by score group. So if they want to see like who their tier 3 kids are, they could just click in this area and it will give them a list of the students that need help. It also ties in with our student information system, so they can look at the attendance, they can look at grades, everything at their fingertips instead of having to look through different other data management systems. We're also very excited about our parent portal. As I mentioned earlier, the parents will be able to see the planning guide just as the teacher does, and they'll go in through our parent portal. We'll have the current 6 weeks in place. The parents will click on the particular core area that they want to see. Then they'll take them to the grade level, and they can see exactly what the teachers are teaching for that subject and that grade. And of course, the final and most important focus for this year is collaboration. This is the first year since since I can think of, that our teacher leaders were invited to our leadership retreat. So all our teacher leaders were there. I think that they were very excited to be part of the leadership retreat, and we're going to continue that. We also have collaboration with the principals. Anything that comes up, we're getting together, for example, on the ESL strategist and on the interventionist. We got together to see what do they think that those job descriptions should look like. What does that schedule for that individual should look like? So they've had part in that. And of course, even more important is the collaboration with the curriculum coordinators. The curriculum coordinators will continue to be assigned to campuses to provide on-site collaboration and support, and then continue collaboration with our teachers for the curriculum review teams, because we want to continue looking at those planning documents and tweaking them as we need to. Any questions?
Madam President, this concludes the presentation, and we'll answer questions on any one of the 4 parts. I know the presentation was lengthy, and I keep telling everyone, while I'm excited about everything that happens in Mike's department, Patty's department, Yanakani's department, we are a teaching and learning institution, and this is what we do. It's a whole lot of work, but we feel we're headed in the right direction, and we look to be able to provide a similar report next year with even increased growth. At this time, we'll take questions for any part of the presentation.
Mr. Chavita?
Congratulations, Doc and staff. You have done so much. It's amazing, very impressive. My question to you now, what about the new teachers coming in? How are we going to touch them? I'm sure you thought about it, but I'd like to hear it, because it's going to be an awesome thing, but it's going to be tiresome, I'm sure, for the new teachers coming in order for them to catch up with what we really now have a great program.
Right, and so that is part of the planning protocol. When the teachers plan, they plan together with their cluster, so they work collaboratively to go over what the lesson plans are. And then we'll continue with the interventionist and the ESL strategist. They're going to be continuing with providing professional development after school, like a mini professional development. Some of that professional development will be embedded into the planning protocol, so it's going to be an ongoing support throughout the year.
That's great.
Mr. Chavita, if I may, there's a first-year teacher sitting in the front row, and I won't put it on the spot, but I know that in the comments that were shared, I'm talking about you, Laura.
Already put her on the spot.
Well, I just want to, Laura was a first-year teacher at Lamar, and it was that collaboration with the teachers through the planning protocol that gave her the confidence each and every day. It must have been frightening having a career change, but that's just one example of how planning protocol helped our new teachers. Now, we will regroup and see what we do in terms of the mentoring of the new teachers through the people that we had and how we improve the process that we had last year. But the planning protocol is how we touch the new teachers each and every day and provide them the instructional support.
Mr. Mesa?
I just have one question. And, we have a lot of great teachers throughout the district, and I just wondered, like, for example, I don't want to say, one particular teacher, but we recognize those teachers that are highly successful, and I hope that those are the ones that are contributing, so that these lessons that are placed in this areas are going to be the ones that are productive and the best lessons. So are we getting those teachers to contribute?
Yes, definitely. And then also, we have our demonstration classrooms through our EEIP. And what we have done is that we have actually recorded some of the teachers providing a lesson. And Reno and Peter are in the process of editing that, and they're going to put it up in our website so that teachers can have access to it.
Because this becomes a wonderful tool. There's so much work that goes on, and every year should be easier for the teachers, and I start all over again. But the accumulation of lessons that are productive and known to be successful with the students are going to make the job easier for the teacher as years go by. And so I think this is a wonderful process, and I'm glad that it's being utilized.
And I think that's going to be one of the advantages also of the SchoolNet, because as you know, there's a lot of TEKS that are repetitive throughout the 6 weeks. And if we would have something like SchoolNet, the teachers could actually search for a particular TEKS, and then all these lessons would come up.
Great. Thanks again for the work.
Dr. Garza, I believe, wanted to add something.
Yes, going back to that, sir, real short, we did have a meeting with one of our teachers, one of our successful teachers at the high school, and we did exactly that. We extracted a lot of information from her to make sure that we incorporate it back into the classrooms, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying who that is. It's Nilda Benavides. She did very well in English, too.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
How does the planning protocol differ from the 5E model of instruction?
Well, the 5E model of instruction is part of the planning protocol. So when the teachers complete a lesson plan, it's in the 5E lesson.
The 5E model that's used for science education.
Right.
So the 5E model, which is specific to science education, is a template for the planning protocol used for all subjects and all
Right.
grade levels?
They don't use it exactly, the 5Es for each one of those. But for example, if it's, engaged, then they might go ahead and put something in that area.
I'm sorry, the 5E model is a lesson plan template. The process of the planning protocol is to culminate in a thorough, well-developed 5E model lesson plan. The 5E model is incorporated into step 4 of the planning protocol and reinforced by step 5. It's just a component of it. And the 5E model is, I know that you mentioned science, but it's really a lesson plan format that we can use in any subject area, not just science. I know you mentioned science, but it's really...
It's part of the national science standards. It's been identified as such, specifically for science.
I know that the 5E model, Sandra's smiling because it was when she was a principal that she went to a workshop and came back extremely excited with a 5E model, and that's the first time, at least in this district, that I heard it, and it's a great model, but we use it in different areas.
You said you had a couple of questions, I believe, sir.
Yeah, I guess we can follow up on the 5E model and its use in fields other than science. I'd like to see that research because I'm not familiar with it.
Hear that, Sandra?
In non-science areas? For elementary as well as secondary?
Eliza can answer something now. She seems to be smiling there like she's ready to jump in the conversation. Or we can bring it back at a later time.
Yeah, we can bring it back.
We'll bring it back, Eliza. Thank you.
So, the walkthroughs, that's what I hear most about. Any plans to scale them back? The number of walkthroughs that a teacher gets in a week, is it still in double digits?
It's 15 walkthroughs per administrator. Most campuses have,
Okay, so if I'm a teacher,
Uh-huh.
right, fifth grade, eighth grade, whatever, how many times is somebody walking in to my classroom in an average week?
once or twice a week.
Once or twice a week?
I think that, Mr. Garabedian, in discussing with the principals, what we ask the principals to do, because we can have the principal doing a walkthrough and we can have the assistant principal doing a walkthrough. So what we asked them towards the end of last year was to have more collaboration amongst each other. I think that they went as far as putting some signs in the door to make sure that the teacher wouldn't get a visit from the principal and the assistant principal on the same day. 15 walkthroughs per administrator, and I know they probably do more than that, but in terms of the feedback that they provide the teacher, is small in comparison to the number of teachers and the number of lessons that are taught. It's that coordination to where the same teacher doesn't get visited sometime twice in a day. That's where we focused our improvement on. But as we move into this coming year, just like the standards increase from 55 to 60% this year, there again, we go into the next phase of accountability where the standards continue to increase. So the monitoring is still incredibly important, but we do recognize that we need to coordinate those a little better, and we started doing that towards the second semester last year and hope to continue that this year.
Any other questions?
So the 4 schools last year that were listed as improvement required are no longer going to be listed improvement required.
No, now, the state does still require for us to have a PSP, our professional service provider. So we're bringing that to the board on August 20th. But they're formally IR campuses. So they still go through the TASTE process. They still have to have a targeted improvement plan, but we don't submit it to the state until in April. They'll do an audit and say, you need to submit it. And then at that time we do. But we still have to go through the whole process. But as far as labeling, no.
And that includes North Heights?
Yes.
No further comments?
Not
Thank
for
you,
open session.
Thank you, Mrs. Garcia.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mesa.
Just a follow-up question in regard to two things. I think the board has to keep in mind math was not taken into account this year. But the other question I had is, PADAS, the evaluation program that we use for teachers, it's intended so that those experienced teachers, you don't go in and do an evaluation, twice a year. It used to be twice a year. Because again, those are experienced teachers that have been there for whatever number of years. And after a while, these walkthroughs become an interruption for instruction. And I agree with Mr. Garabedian that it's excessive, and we did have instances where a teacher would say, well, I got visited twice today, principal and the assistant came in today, same day. But it really becomes a distraction where students are going to turn back and see who came in. And so principals and administrators, they know who those experienced teachers are. They're not going to get away from, teaching or doing arts and crafts or whatever. They're going to be those teachers that are successful because, again, the administrators are identifying those teachers as experience, and so the same thing goes with the evaluation system. They're being visited less compared to a new teacher where, that's first year, second year. The whole intent, again, from walkthroughs is not to create so many distractions where 15 walkthroughs for every administrator. They're gonna be interrupting classrooms. That's in my opinion.
Well, Mr. Mesa, you are correct that 15 would become a distraction if our teachers and students were not used to it. For example, if we would only do 1 or 2 per week, and we come a third, or fourth, fifth time, and the students are not used to it, then it would become a distraction. At this point, I do believe our assistant principals and principals are behind me, and even the teachers are accustomed to those walkthroughs because it's the norm. And there's a big correlation between the actual walkthroughs and what's being planned in planning protocol, because what's being planned is being delivered in instruction, and that's what we're going into the classrooms to make sure that it's working. Assistant principals and principals are in every planning protocol, so it's a correlation between both of them. Teachers, principals, assistant principals, and making sure that it's happening. And if it's not, then at that point, it doesn't become a directive of why you're not doing it. It becomes a collaboration of how can we do it better in planning protocol. So I do understand what you're saying, but we're a long ways from where we used to be, where it was only 1 or 2 walkthroughs per week, which was where we were at. So I mean, I don't want to completely disagree with you, sir. I think our teachers and students are accustomed to, okay, here comes the administrator again. So it doesn't become a distraction because it's constant every single week.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. The only thing is, just opening a door is gonna create students looking back, see who it is. That's all.
You don't, I'm just gonna, Lozano, you don't think that's just a little bit of a distraction? I mean, even though they're used to the program, you still get thrown off just a little bit. In the classroom, y'all haven't, it's trained, they understand to keep going. They don't get distracted at all.
Well, I wouldn't say that, Mrs.
No, I'm looking out at the, yeah, sorry, Dr. Garza.
And Eliza.
Sorry, Dr. Garza, but I'm just saying, I mean, there has to be a little bit of distraction.
Of course.
Okay.
The door
Yeah,
opens and students tend to look to who's coming.
And then if
Of
they're
course.
young, it's kind of hard to get them back on track.
Well, I wouldn't say there's no distraction. Yes, there will be some distraction, but my point to Mr. Mesa was, if it's something that's done consistently, I think it's something that becomes a norm. Yet, I'm not going to disagree with you, ma'am. The door opens, and someone's going to turn to see who's coming. But I'm willing to bet that, as a matter of fact, at the high school, I heard several students say that students saying that there was a lot of walkthroughs going, and it was part of the norm. And I don't want to answer this question if some of our assistant principals and principals can answer that.
Wait. But, Madam President,
Yes.
I think what we're expressing, or what our concern is, right, is how you take what has been 2 years of difficult instructional reform, right, which has begun to show progress, and I certainly commend all the teachers and the instructional staff of the progress that you see over a 3-year time period. Let's not put up the 2 years, because last year the scores were really poor. Without pointing fingers or blaming anyone, the scores were poor. So when you compare those scores to this year, there are significant gains. But when you look at it over 3 years of time, it's much more moderated. But the progress is there, and certainly that's due to the instructional staff in the classroom and in the C&I department. So I think our question is, our concern, and I don't mean to put words into Mr. Messa's mouth or Ms. Haynes' mouth, is how do you build on that while at the same time relieving some of the burden on teachers? Because Ms. Haynes is a teacher. And I wouldn't claim to be a very good one, but I'm a teacher too. And yeah, coming into a classroom is disruptive. I'm not saying that it should not happen or must not happen or anything like that, but now that the new has become somewhat the norm, and I hear about increased collaboration, and that's great, because teachers like to collaborate. Right, Ms. Haynes? Teachers love to collaborate. They love to learn from other teachers. I see a lot of technical support, and that's good if you have the time for it, I think that's where some of these questions from TEA come in about whether or not the instructional coaches and curriculum coordinators are having the desired effect. So I think that's where we're coming from. I mean, how now, moving forward in, I guess, the third year, right, of this reform, how will teachers be empowered without being more burden placed on them? That's, I think, what I'm hearing.
I'll answer that for the team. I think that, well, I know that there's certainly some trade-offs. In order for us to improve the instruction, we're required to monitor it. And we have built and we have made changes from one year to the next. Planning protocol, the way we implemented it first year to the way we implemented it second year, there was some give and take in terms of flexibility with the teachers' times. I can guarantee you that if I ask who wants the number of walkthroughs reduced, the first ones that are going to agree with me are the principals, because they're required to provide some feedback to the teachers. But there is a trade-off. What we get, the feedback we get from the walkthroughs and how to improve the planning is vital. Can we reduce it? Perhaps. I'm not closing the door on that. But I'm also not prepared to say right now that we will reduce it, but we'll certainly have that conversation with the cluster leaders and the principals and assistant principals to come up with a way where we can still monitor and improve upon the instruction without creating uncomfortable effect for the teachers. So we'll have that discussion, Mr. Mesa, Mr. Garabino, and Ms. Haynes. But we also have to recognize that there are trade-offs as we move to improve everything that we do. And I'll report back to y'all as soon as we have that conversation. If y'all let me have 30 or 45 days, we can look at it and make adjustments.
And my question about North Heights was not out of context. If memory serves, 2 years ago, there was an openly spoken concern that North Heights Elementary would, I think at that time, be rated as unacceptable, or maybe it was needs improvement at the same time. That's 2 years ago, in the summer of 2013, but it didn't happen. And so I was also looking at preliminary scores. I think there was some belief, maybe that's the word, that North Heights would not meet standard this year, but it did, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I'm having a little trouble understanding the reassignment of 2 principals in 2 years. But that's a discussion for closed session. So all of our 4 schools have met standard. Okay. Well, again, congratulations to all the instructional staff and the principals, and the teachers.
And the administration for their guidance and direction, because it does take everyone doing their part. Okay. Do we want to take a break, or do you want to go on to the consent agenda? Okay. Motion,
Madam President, motion for a 5-minute recess.
seconded.
Thank you.
All in favor? Unanimous, 5 minutes. It is 8:40. It is 8:40. We'll be back in 5. All right, we're back from our break. We'll begin with consent agenda. There were multiple items under the consent agenda tonight, A through G. Does anyone wish to pull?
Yeah, there's actually, I don't know if we need to pull them, but there are mistakes on the minutes I can point out.
Okay.
If we turn to page 15.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garrett, can we give Bailey a second to get to the minutes so that she can make the changes?
Okay.
Okay. I was a little confused on, there's a couple places actually where there's a factual error, but on page 15 I was confused. On C, on the minutes, on page 15, on the bottom, where it says Human Resources and Student Services, A, B, C, what is C trying to say? Consideration to approve the 2015-16 school year?
Oh, under C?
Yes.
For increasing the district's contribution?
Is that what it was? That's okay. All right.
Also maybe the commas was confusing.
Yeah, I would. Okay, and then, more importantly, I think, on page 17 of those same minutes, and this one I know to be a factual error. Look on page 17 of those same minutes, and of course, I'm referring to the July 20th, 2015 minutes. On page 17, just above B, where it says Erica Varela, Del Rio High School Assistant Principal, and it mentions a vote, that's not accurate, and it actually shows up on the next page. I know it's not accurate because that night I voted against each of the assistant principal recommendations. See how it's on the next page, Betty? So that entire portion there, where it says Erica Varela, Del Rio High School Assistant Principal, whatever, that should be out, because that actually shows up on page 18. And on page 22 of the following minutes, these are the minutes for August 6th. Are there two Angelica Hernandez's from Del Rio Middle School physical education teacher that were recommended that night for hire? Okay, because it's listed twice on the minutes. So one of them needs to be struck. And I know it seems nitpicking, but as everyone knows, the minutes, once approved, become the official record, and we'd actually have to bring them back to rescind them and then fix them. So those three things. And then I have a couple quick questions, if I may, on some other areas of the consent agenda.
Did you want to?
I just want to ask, Betty, please coordinate with Patty McNamara. I want to make sure that that the typo didn't omit another name that was recommended that night. Can you check before the meeting's over?
Right, it might have been
McNamara?
somebody
Right.
else that should have been there. I don't think
That was
it. Can I ask a
Yes, sir,
question? Okay.
please.
And then, again, under consent, if you flip over to consent F2, and this is just a real quick question for Mrs. Valdez, consideration to approve the purchase order over $25,000 with TASB in the amount of $685,000, 576, so big I can't say it, $685,576 for property, equipment, general liability, professional legal liability. I realize this is part of that buy board thing, which is supposed to streamline, but my only question is, since that amount is so large, has that changed from the last time we did that? A couple years ago, I think we took action on basically the same, at least that's what the memo said. But was the amount that large?
The amount, yes, was that large. Our property insurance has remained, I said the cumulative of property, equipment, general liability, everything excluding workers' comp and unemployment has remained consistent. The unemployment, which is about 33,000, that one used to be a little bit higher. So that rate has come down. The unemployment is now at 31,000, and probably 2 years ago it's a little bit higher.
Okay.
I don't have the exact amount, but I recall it being reduced.
Okay. All right. And then I have another question, and it's not for you, Ms. Valdez, I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Also on consent on G1, I think this is for Mr. Salinas, consideration of approved contract over $5,000 with Weaver Technologies in the amount of $5,520. I understand $5,520 in a district budget of approximately $75 million is a drop in the bucket. But the way I read your memo, somebody broke the cable, correct?
Yes, sir.
Someone broke the fiber optic or whatever cable during the re-roofing of Del Rio High School?
Yes, sir, that goes to the library. It
All
was
right.
damaged.
Who broke the cable?
The roofing company.
Then why isn't the roofing company paying for the replacement?
It's under negotiation.
But you're asking us to
Yes, to move forward to approve the repair that needs to be done.
Okay, how much are we paying the roofer for that job?
It's close to 900 and some thousand
Okay,
dollars.
so they break a cable in the process of a $900,000 roofing job, and its repair would be approximately $5,000, and they're resistant.
No,
Paying it?
not at all.
Okay.
But it has to go through a process, and it's under negotiation with our architect and the roofing company and myself, and also the technology director, to determine final culpability and the amount that they're responsible for. As the memo indicates, the fiber line up there was in poor repair to begin with. The contractor does have an obligation to inform the architect or my office that they're getting ready to move some conduit. They failed to do that, although the conduit itself was in disrepair to where basically if anyone touched it, it was going to damage that fiber.
Okay. All right, but it was a contractor that broke the cable.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, just one more question, Ms. Lozano, on G4. I noticed this consideration to approve contract and purchase order over $25,000 with Stetson and Associates in the amount of $37 plus travel for staff development. I guess the contract is on page 73 in our packet, and there's an asterisk at the bottom that says travel costs will be billed separately and may include airfare, hotel, rental car, per diem, mileage, and parking. So they might charge us for their rental car and mileage?
They will be coming out of San Antonio or Austin. So, I really feel that the rental car, they present all over the country. That's if they fly in and need a car to rent when they get to the airport. I don't foresee that, because I asked them about that and told them that, and about the flights, we really don't have any means at this point, and they said that they would be sending people from Austin or San Antonio.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. That's it. That's all I had questions or
Does
found
anyone
in
else
error.
have any other questions? Thank you, sir.
F4.
F4?
F4, consideration to approve the purchase over $25,000 with Sprint, not to exceed $35,000 for the internet service. I was looking at the proposal from Sprint, and it breaks down to 1 gigabyte per device there per month. I didn't know if, with what we're going to be doing with that, is there going to be a lot of streaming on those devices? Because you can blow through a gigabyte in a day. So I didn't know how much, and then what's the overage going to be when we exceed 141 gigabytes?
I know that Mr. Henge is in the back. If you'll ask him to come forward, he can answer how they monitored this last year and what the. Did you mute us back there, Mr. Henge?
Sorry, I couldn't hear it over the pad.
On the purchase order for the internet service through Sprint for the iPads that are going to be at, I think it's at Calderon. I was reading the proposal, and it breaks down to basically it's 1 gigabyte per device there for a month there. Is there going to be a lot of streaming or anything? Because you can blow through a gigabyte real quick if it's graphic intensive or video intensive.
Right, and it's my understanding that those plans were actually upgraded at the end of the first year to be in compliant with the grant that we originally received. We haven't experienced any problems in the past as far as going over on those data plans at all. So I'm not anticipating, but we do monitor those on a regular basis.
I just want to make sure, because I know you can go through a gig real quick.
Sure.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
G5?
I had a question on G5, which is consideration to approve contract over $5,000 with Edmonton Holdings Incorporated. I've heard of Plato, but I've never heard of this company before. Is it change or?
No, sir, that's the name of the company.
But
It is
Plato,
for Plato.
it replaces?
No, it is for Plato. It's just that's the name of the company.
Plato is
Yeah.
the recovery system that we
Right.
use,
Okay, so,
but the actual company is Edmonton. It's the same one that the high school uses.
okay. So it's just adding more licenses.
Yes, sir. This is specifically for the migrant students, and it is a site license versus individual licenses, so that we can have classes over at Annex 2 or any place else.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
Madam President, can we pull G1
G1.
and vote on it separately?
Yes, sir. We can pull G1. All right. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda with the exception of G1, as well as making the necessary changes to the minutes, July the 20th, the error on page 15, to remove that comma under H, Human Resource C, on page 17 to remove Erica Varela, as this is found on page 18, and then on the August 6th minutes, on page 22, there is a duplicate, Angelica Hernandez, PE teacher. One should be stricken from that. Do we have a motion? Mr. Overfelt?
Second.
Mr. Garabedian, second. All in favor?
I wanted to ask a question on that.
I'm sorry.
My
I did-
apologies.
I'm sorry, I did
should've
not notice. Let's back
spoken
up.
The reason I'm on that, pulling that one, can we ask questions on it? If we bring it up, in the future, is it gonna delay the installation? The school
We're gonna-
district to get started?
We're going to discuss it right now, and then we will take a vote separately.
All right.
Is that okay? So going back to the first and second for all the agenda items except for that one, which is G1. All in favor?
For all of them?
Except for G1. Dr. Gies? Opposed. 6-4, one against, motion carries. Okay, going to G1, consideration to approve the contract over the 5,000 with Weaver Technologies.
If I may, Madam President?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Hengay, I know that Mr. Hengay and his staff have done a temporary fix. And if, just for clarity, if this item with Weaver Technologies was either tabled or declined tonight, how long is that temporary fix good for, Mr. Hengay?
Currently, the fix that we have in place is, we have restored connectivity, but it's just slower than what they're used to down in the library type area. So if it was decided to table it tonight, we could still get by, but it would be slow. It would be really slow. We've ran actually 2 cables and there's a workaround just to get back up before school starts on Monday.
And then I have a question for Mr. Salinas. Mr. Salinas, the process of negotiating how much of the 5,200, the exact amount, the process of negotiating that with a contractor, what do you believe is the appropriate time to conclude those negotiations?
We're in the substantial completion phase, and that is under discussion right now before we actually move to complete closeout of the project. Our process in construction, when we encounter a situation like this, is to move forward to get it fixed. And then through the negotiation process, because we're holding money on the contractor, is then part of the closeout process is to determine culpability and what the costs are going to be. Whether the contractor agrees or not, we're going to withhold that money. If they agree, then it's done, and we move forward with closing out the project with a last pay request.
How much money have we, approximately, what's the retainage on that project?
It's 5% of the close to 900,000, so whatever that
So there's easily $45,000 that we have retained for that project.
Yes, and that's not released.
That's not released until we negotiate this, and that negotiation should be completed within the next 30 days. If we're in the
Yes,
substantial completion, then we're talking about 30 days.
correct. Yeah, the
Okay, so
closeout for this one, I believe, is 60 days to do the final closeout after all the punch list.
Okay, so then we're confident that we have enough money to cover that expense. We're holding the money. And we do have connectivity, although it's a library which has high volume. And again, I've had this conversation, but I just wanted to clarify it for the board. We believe that we'll get enough money from the contractor. We have enough money. The library has a lot of activity, and at this time, we would continue with the recommendation, but we'll answer any questions before then.
Mr. Salinas or Les, are you aware, did we have any fault?
Yes, we do. We have fault in this because our conduit was in poor repair up on that roof. The culpability on the roofer is that he failed to notify my office or the architect, hey, I'm about to move conduit because I need to continue work on that portion of the roof, not realizing the condition that the whole conduit was in, and in moving it over in order to do the roof repair, they damaged the fiber that was inside that conduit. But that conduit, the terminals connecting one conduit to another conduit, because it's a very long run, were actually, in many cases, not even there. They weren't even connected. So as soon as they lifted up that conduit, it kinked the line in more than one location and obviously damaged the fiber.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Do we have a motion?
The little experience that I have as a contractor, Mr. Salinas, is that regardless, he should have been more careful. It's his fault. He broke it. He pays for it.
And that's what we're looking into, Mr. Chavita.
Madam President, I'll move to accept on the condition that administration informs us of the final resolution of the dispute.
Absolutely.
I'll second your motion. All in favor? Unanimous? That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Haynes, at this time, would you like to read off the donations?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Florida Federal Credit Union, $200, Del Rio High School. Del Rio Housing Authority, $57, Del Rio High School. Target Corporation, $50, San Felipe Memorial Middle School. Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, $150, Del Rio High School. Thank you for your donations.
As always, we definitely do appreciate members of our community and outside of our community that support our district. Thank you. Betty, do we have any citizens to be heard? All right. No one has signed up to make comments. Let's move on to number 10. Under Administration A, consideration to approve the implementation of the San Felipe Del Rio CISD School Board Policy Review Committee. Ms. Hernandez.
Good evening, Ms. Martinez Lozano, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Last month, I shared a presentation with the board committee for a proposal for the administration to create and implement the San Felipe Del Rio CISD School Board Policy Review Committee. This would be chaired by a school board member, and the committee's membership would include 2 additional school board members, member of the superintendent's cabinet, a member of the administrative staff, and the administrative director. If adopted, the School Board Policy Review Committee will review and select the options for beginning the process of selecting legal and local governance to review. And preceding these steps, the committee would organize the governance and the process in which to review the areas. In the 3rd step, the committee would review and study and deliberate current legal and local policy, including proposed TASB policy updates, and recommend any changes for approval and adoption. In step 4 of the process, the administrative director would then submit the proposed changes after the deliberation and the consideration at the next regularly school board meeting. And the final step is once the changes or any, excuse me, agreement to the policy changes are made, then the administrative director would share that change with the TASB policy consultant. Are there any questions at this time?
Any questions? Recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the implementation of the San Felipe Del Rio CISD School Board Policy Review Committee as presented.
We've heard the recommendation, motioned by Mr. Chavita, seconded by Mr. Overfelt. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is the consideration to approve the San Felipe Del Rio Consolidated Independent School District School Board Policy Review Committee members. I reached out to Mr. Josh Overfelt and Mrs. Amy Haynes. They both are very interested in sitting on this policy review committee, as am I. So I am making the recommendation for us three to be on this committee. So I am making the motion that we approve Mr. Overfelt, Ms. Haynes, and myself to represent the board on the School Board Policy Review Committee.
I second the motion.
All right. Any discussion? No. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you very much. That motion carries. All right. Item 11 and 12, curriculum and instruction, facilities and operations. There are no items for this meeting. Moving on to 13, business and finance. A, consideration to approve the MOU in accordance with Section 642E5 of the Head Start Act. Head Start agencies, grantees, are required to enter into an MOU with appropriate local entities.
Ms. Martinez-Lozano, Dr. Rios, members of the board. In your packet, you have different agencies that provide transportation either to and or from Cardwell to our students at Cardwell. So at this time, do you all have any questions regarding the agencies that provide transportation?
Any questions? I just have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these the same as year to year, pretty much?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The only difference is we have never presented the agencies that provide transportation, but it was recommended by the regional office that we present the agencies as well.
Perfect.
That's why they have never been presented to the board before.
Thank you. We ready for the recommendation?
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the memorandums of understanding and authorize the superintendent to sign the memorandums of understanding as presented.
Mr. Chavita moves first, second by Mr. Overfelt. Any discussion? Any concerns? All in favor? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. B, consideration to approve the first reading of Board Policy DEC Local and DED Local. Ms. Yanakani Valdez.
Good evening, Ms. Lozano, Dr. Rios, board members. During the 15-16 budget process, we initiated a days off comparison with 4 other school districts. Our district offers 10 and 11th month employees 13.5 days, 11 and 12 month employees 14 days, while other districts offer 10, 11, and 12 days to, I should say it's lower, but while other districts offer 10 days for 10-month employees, 11 days for 11th month employees, and 12 days for 12-month employees. We've included 2 policies as we compared them to the other districts. And DEC added and deleted language for the change of the days off. And DED, we added language because we have what we added in practice, but it was not included in our policy, and other districts did have it in their policy.
Ready for the
Any
recommendations?
questions? Okay. Okay.
And then
It is,
last
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It is the recommendation of the administration to approve the first reading of board policy DEC local and DED local.
Okay, we have heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion?
I so move.
Dr. Keys, do we have a second? Mr. Overfelt, we've heard the recommendation. We have motions. Do we have questions? Mr. Mesa.
All the changes are highlighted in either deleted red and added blue?
Yes, sir. Just as the same format as we use with any policy changes. Any removals are in red, striked through and in red. Any added is in blue. Any moved text is in green, but we didn't have any moved text. But yes, it's consistent with the processes that we use.
Mr. Chavita?
It's a great plan. First of all, let me say that. But what I don't like, and I always brought it up, and that's the limited transfer days that are donated. I got trouble with that, and let me tell you why. From my experience, when I retired, I had something like 300 days. In my years of being employed, I donated 20 to teachers and about, I don't know, maybe 50 to a janitor, I remember, and that was my doing. And then at the end of my career, I wasn't even paid for those days because, as you will know, only certain type of days are paid. So why is it, and there's a lot of teachers, and I know that it was taken off at one time, you could donate as many days as you wanted to. But whoever wanted to change it, changed it because it was some bit abuse, and I could see it. But with all the governing committee that's there, that could be very easily eliminated. I think that teachers ought to, especially the more experienced teachers that have a bunch of days. And I can see also that you could only donate so many because of, you got to have a certain number, which is great. They got to protect themselves. And sometimes, because we have teachers with a good heart, they don't think about themselves at times, and they want to donate all the days. And then they get sick, and then they need it. And I can see that. But I cannot see when a teacher has 150 or whatever the days that they couldn't help a fellow teacher in need. Because, like, for example, last year we had a teacher that had a great need for days to be given to him. So I sure would like administration to look into it and do everything else, but let the teacher decide how many days they want to donate to the individual or their fellow teacher.
Might I make a suggestion, Mr. Chavita, and to the administration? This might be something that the board review policy actually looks at researching and following up with that. But for the purposes of tonight, it's my understanding that this is tied to our budget, correct? The changes?
We had presented it as part of the budget process and have included the second reading in the August 20th board agenda.
So do we need to act on this now, or do we need to, can we just take it separately? I mean, that issue along with the review committee.
For our teacher calendars, their start day is 9/1, and at that point, we make those days available. So we would have to approve before 9/1, which we have August 20th, where we have the second reading, or August 27th is another meeting that we have this month.
I would recommend that we follow your recommendation. Mr. Chavita brings up a good point. We need to look at it but I think that that's separate, at least the item that he's bringing forth today is separate. So we can have, we promise to look into it, Mr. Tavita, through the committee.
It'll be fine. Just a point that when I was at the freshman, we had a teacher there that had been teaching something like, at the time that I was there, something like maybe 25, between 25 and 30. He was a science teacher, and he had never been absent in that many years. So can you imagine all the days that he had accumulated?
Okay, we've heard the recommendation, we've had the motions. All in favor? Six, four?
No.
Mr. Garaviti opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Yanakani, 2016 Val Verde County Appraisal District Budget. Ms. Valdez.
Thank you. The Val Verde Appraisal District submitted the budget that their board adopted on August 10th, 2015. The governing bodies now have 30 days to approve or disapprove the budget. Ms. Sheedy joined us at the Finance Committee meeting to address some questions because she was not able to make it to tonight's meeting. The change in the overall budget is an increase of $3,601.67. If I may answer your question, I hope I can answer your questions, but
Chairman, I have a couple questions. First off, the budget looks sound. I mean, considering the entire budget, and I think there's only a slight difference from the previous year, I think like $3,000, something like that. But my question is, and I've already talked to a couple of the board members from the appraisal district, and I know we have one here with us tonight as well, is on the first page of their preliminary budget, and it's regarding the salary adjustments. They have a number of salary adjustments listed. It's on the first page, on page 1 of 6. I'm not a mathematician, that's certainly true, but just kind of a cursory view of these adjustments, starting with the appraiser / systems. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 staff positions with a one-time adjustment. One is 10%, another is roughly 28%, 18%, 35%. Dollar amounts of $4,412, $9,033, $6,293, $9,100. On the lower end, $984, $74, $427, $2,000. So a little clarification. For my understanding is that this is part of a two-year plan to adjust salaries to bring them to some sort of market.
yes, sir. At the last meeting, they shared that the board had established a market value for the positions that they would like to follow in order for placement. I believe they did not have that in the past, and with that, in order to align the salaries, they were to stay within a certain budget level. And I believe on one of them, they eliminated a position, they redistributed responsibilities, and again, aligned that to a salary schedule that they were approving to be based on market values.
Okay.
If there's anything I left out, Mr. Mesa, if you could please add.
That's pretty much correct. I think the whole thing stems from the fact that we train our appraisers to be level 1, level 2, level 3, and then they end up going to another taxing entity, whether it's a city or somewhere else, another appraisal district. And so what we did is a study to compare salaries and market values, and so we determined that compared to other taxing entities that had approximately the same, I guess you say, property, number of parcels and population and so forth, we were very low compared to other appraisal districts. And so we train our appraisers and then we lose our appraisers going somewhere else.
I have I guess for Mr. Mesa, since you have direct knowledge. So like, for example, on one of these positions, one of these individuals, where it's a $9,000 pay increase this year, this is the first year of 2 years. So will they get something comparable next year, or will it be a dramatically less amount or a larger amount?
I'm sure she answered that question because I know that it's a 2-year, we could not afford the whole change in 1 year. We were $12,000 under. So we decided to do it over a 2-year period. It's very much like paraprofessionals that they're under a 3-year plan to bring them up to par. So we could not do it all in 1 year. It's going to be a 2-year process. But that amount it includes already the increase for 1 year.
I believe what was mentioned also was that this year they're higher than next year, but again, it's.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yes,
So if I
they
get a
were-
$9,000 pay increase this year, or a $6,000 pay increase this year, am I going to get a $6,000 pay increase next year, or a $9,000 pay increase next year?
No, they were trying to get them as close this year as they could. As you can see, those actual two that you identified, they both have 3 years. So they originally had a different value. So those two values, or the 9,000 increase and the 6,000 increase, would place them at the same years of experience. The placement of the value of this as the same years of experience. And I did not see the tables for next year, but that's my understanding when they were explaining that this year had the majority of the adjustment, but you would still see adjustments next year.
If I may ask, Yanakani, because it wasn't broken down 50% this year and 50% next year. It was over this year.
Not as it was explained at the meeting, no. But they had a target as to what budget to stay within, and with that, they made as much adjustments as they could, but it was going to be a 2-year plan.
Mr. Mesa, were there any dissenting votes at the appraisal district?
No, sir.
Has this gone to the other taxing entities, to the city, to the county, hospital board?
Everybody received the document, yes, sir. I did not contact them to ask them if they have voted or not.
I don't know that answer, sir.
Mr. Chevy?
Mr. Mason, how long does it take for an individual to get certified? For the first one, then the other step, no?
I would, because there are 3 different levels, so it's hard to say, but it's going to be more than 3 years. I mean, they go by levels, and so they start with nothing, and then they go to training, and then level 1, and they continue to train, and then have to take the test and so forth. So it does take quite a number of years to become proficient at level 3. As you know, we have one level 3, and pretty much the others are new.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm a little concerning that the salary that they will be making, are they supposed to, do they have to be a degree person or just a certified?
They have to be certified appraiser.
And they're making more than our teachers, starting salary. And if they're gonna get another raise like Mr. Gabriel was asking next year, boy, they're really gonna be up here.
The starting salary is 30,000 on their pay scale, with nobody with experience. The level 0.
But if we lose, and then everybody, we haven't lost anybody then, because the salary is the lowest. Appraiser is a level 3, and he or she is making 35,000.
With 6 years of experience. Yes.
Yeah, it has been compared to.
So are we losing them, or we're not? We are?
She reported we were.
Yes. Ms. Shitty reported that we were losing them, yes.
the main reason for the adjustments was retention.
And one thing,
Compared
I'm
salaries,
sorry.
was to what they making elsewhere.
She would have brought something, yeah, I thought she was gonna be here. I would have brought something,
I'm sorry.
I didn't know she was not gonna be here.
One thing to mention that may be misleading in the report is that the two top positions, which are the chief and deputy, even though it shows a column saying 2016 longevity, if you compare 2015 total and 26 total, there's no change in their salary. But the way the report is structured is a little bit misleading. But she did clarify that for us at the finance committee meeting. But the
So
top
that-
two positions did not have a
Not
change
get
in
an
salary.
increase.
Right.
Mr. Garabedian, did you have another question?
No,
Okay, we're ready for the recommendation.
Okay, I'll read the recommendation to approve the budget, and then the board can vote as they wish. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the 2016 budget for the Val Verde County Appraisal District.
We have heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion? I'll motion that we approve. Mr. Mesa seconds it. We've had our discussion. Are there any further questions? Okay, all in favor? 6-4, and 1 opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. We're on number 14, Human Resources and Student Services. Dr. McNamara has a couple of job descriptions and evaluation forms to discuss.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Ms. Lozano, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. As previously mentioned this evening from Ms. Garcia and Ms. Gomez, the administration respectfully requests the following for you to consider this evening. And number 1 would be to convert the instructional coach job title to interventionist as just a title change, no impact to the budget, and that the appropriate or the revised job description evaluation forms be considered this evening to accurately reflect the job description of the interventionist. Secondly, the administration is requesting the conversion of the instructional coach to the bilingual ESL strategist for 187 days, and we have 2 particular employees at 220. And that again is a title change, no impact to the budget, and the appropriate job description evaluation forms are in your packet. And thirdly, the administration respectfully requests your approval for the revised coordinator of parent community bilingual and ESL job description evaluation forms. All 4 of these job descriptions and evaluation forms and the appropriate title changes have been submitted to our office or my office by the C&I department, and they are here to answer any questions you might have. Particularly when it comes to the coordinator of parent community bilingual and ESL, that position now will report directly to C&I and will focus primarily on LPACs and of course all the other job duties that were outlined in those job descriptions in your packet. You want to hear the recommendation? We want to separate these out? Do you have discussion?
I'd like to have some discussion and a request to separate.
Yes, sir.
My first questions are on the attached sheet. So if I look at this sheet, starting with where it says Chavita Elementary, and it lists 1 interventionist, 1 bilingual ESL interventionist, Garfield, vacancy, and so forth. Under Del Rio Freshman School and under Del Rio High School, in both cases, it lists Maria Hudgens. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay.
we don't have enough for, with the existing instructional coaches, we don't have enough to give 1 interventionist and 1 instructional coach per campus, so we strategically group them together in the area that they would work. So for example, at the very top, you see Chavita, and Chavira has one, bilingual ESL interventionist, and the one is blank. Well, we don't have enough interventionists to assign to every campus. We are going to implement this program with as much fidelity as possible, and we're hopeful that after we can provide the board some data in terms of the interventions that they're providing, if funding is available, we can come back and add positions. At this time, we do not have, with the existing instructional coaches, we do not have enough people to assign one per campus.
I have another question. Wasn't Mrs. Hudgens on our minutes as a Del Rio Middle School ELA instructional coach? I'm looking at it on page 22.
Yes, sir. At the time she was hired for that vacancy. When we got everyone together, looking at everyone's strengths, we made those recommendations to transfer people based on the needs of the campus and the personnel that we had.
Okay. And one last question. So if I'm counting correctly, if this is approved, there's a net increase of 3 instructional coach type personnel.
No, sir.
No?
No, if, the bilingual ESL strategist, Ms. Maria Elena Enriquez Faz, and
Elda Garcia.
Elda Garcia were already strategists. Those are the 2 individuals that are currently working those extended days and have some testing.
20.
There is absolutely no increase whatsoever to the number of positions at all. They will have detailed duties for the summer, but in essence, they will be providing the same services to the campuses that the other positions listed as a 2 on your attachment. These are current instructional coaches that will become bilingual ESL interventionists.
I had a question.
Mr. Mesa, I'm sorry.
I had a question on the job description for interventionist. If you look at major responsibilities, under number 4, serve as a campus response to intervention RTI resource by providing teachers with effective strategies, interventions designed to meet the needs of Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 students. But it doesn't say direct contact. It provides teachers.
They would help as a source, but again, their primary job is going to be working directly with students. That is going to be their primary job. They will do other support areas, but their primary job will be to work with students in the guided instruction model that we described in the earlier presentation.
It doesn't say there.
By providing teachers. Number 2.
It
still doesn't say they're working with students. Number 2 does not say they're working with students either.
Not Tier 1, Tier 2, or 3, Tier 3.
We'd be happy to clarify it, Mr. Mesa, and add or change. I'll change it right now.
On number 3, it says students, but it doesn't say Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3.
Okay, I will combine number 3, and well, I'll leave number 2, number 4 as this, but I'll write service campus by providing students, in parentheses, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 interventions through various models.
As long as they're working with students. And here it says they're working with teachers.
Yes, sir. will definitely make that change.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Garabedian, you had stated you wanted to separate these out.
If we could.
All right, if we can make the recommendation based on.
For each one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's a recommendation of the administration that the title changes to convert the instructional coach to interventionist as a title change at each elementary and secondary campus, and approve the associated job description and evaluation forms be approved as presented this evening, with the correction as Dr. Rios stated in number 3.
All right, we've heard the recommendation. Mr. Overfelt first and Mr. Chavita seconded. All in favor? 6-4. Opposed?
Nope.
Mr. Garabedian, motion carries. Yes, ma'am.
Number 2, it is a recommendation of the administration that the instructional coach title be also changed to bilingual ESL strategist, 187, and the 220-day position for each of the campus bilingual centers, and to approve the associated job description evaluation forms for that particular position.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion? Mr. Overfelt, seconded by myself. All in favor? 6-4. Opposed?
Nope.
Mr. Garabedian opposed. Motion carries.
Number 3, it is a recommendation of the administration that the revised coordinator of parent community bilingual and ESL position and the appropriate job description evaluation forms be presented this evening, be approved, excuse me, as presented this evening.
We have heard the recommendation. We have a motion.
I so move.
Mr. Garabedian first, Mr. Chavita second. All in favor? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, number 15, technology services. There are no items. We are ready for closed session. It is now August the 17th at 9:40 p.m. The Board of Trustees will recess this open session and convene in a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. We're able to do that under Sections 551.071 through 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.084. Specifically, pursuant to 551.074, the discussion of personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. 1, the discussion of personnel report to include the following: new hires and district vacancies, retirements, resignations, and reassignments. 2, discussion of salary adjustments to include, but not limited to, the following justifications: service credit, master's degree, stipends, and MIP adjustment. And 3, discussion of the district chief of police position. Okay, all final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open session. We are now in closed session. It is now August the 17th at 10:36 p.m. The Board of Trustees will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. Now that we've reconvened in open session, we'll continue with A, consideration to approve the personnel report to include new hires.
Ms. Lozano, Dr. Rios, members of the board. It is the recommendation of the administration that the following recommendations be approved this evening. Ms. Robin Pletcher, ELA teacher at Del Rio High School. Ms. Annette Gertie, counselor at Del Rio Middle School. Ms. Loris Cowan, counselor at Del Rio Middle School. Ms. Nicole Parker, ELA teacher at Del Rio Middle School. Roberta L. Hernandez, ELA teacher at Del Rio Middle School.
Mrs. Deborah Escamilla, counselor at Ruben Chavita Elementary. Miss Nancy De La Rosa, bilingual ESL strategist for Ruben Chavita Elementary. Miss Flor Almeda Munoz, third grade bilingual teacher at Ruben Chavita Elementary. Miss Rocio Pena, interventionist at North Heights Elementary. Miss Luann Viesca, interventionist at Garfield Elementary. Miss Stacy Harris, third grade teacher at Garfield. Okay, we've heard the recommendations. Do Mr. Overfeld, and seconded by Mr. Mesa. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, there were no salary adjustments tonight. Moving on to C, consideration to approve the district chief of police.
The administration recommends Dwayne Maldonado for chief of police.
We have heard the recommendation. Motion by Mr. Mesa, seconded by myself. Any discussion?
Madam Chairman, I'd just like to say I think all the candidates that applied were good candidates, and certainly thank the individuals involved. I won't be supporting any of the top candidates discussed.
Okay.
I still have unresolved questions.
All right. We've heard the recommendation. We've had first and seconded. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Five in favor. Opposed? Two opposed. Motion carries. Yes, sir.
I would like to publicly thank Mr. Lupe Costilla for assisting as interim chief of police. My wholehearted appreciation and respect for what he has done. He will remain acting chief until the hiring process, fingerprints, et cetera, is done for the chief of police. So at this time, I would just direct everybody under the chief of police to provide Mr. Costilla the respect that is due to the acting chief. And again, thank him for the wonderful commitment he has shown to the district over the past 30-plus years, and certainly over the last year.
Thank you. All right. Number 18, superintendent's report. We have no items, so the next on our agenda is adjournment. Do we have a motion by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Mr. Mesa? All in favor? Unanimous? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.